Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Time to Laugh. Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I honestly haven't put a ton of thought into the stream today. So I feel a little bit on my on my heels at the moment. But we're happy to be back. I'm excited to get into it, and I'm just gonna keep doing what I've been doing and reading this book. Incredible book so far. I'm reading The Baby Catcher Gate by Wendy Jo Cerna. She is an incredible author. This is the first book that I read from her, but she has multiple. The book that I'm reading is part of a series. So I have the updated cover. If you go back and watch my first couple videos, I have the old version of the cover, and now I have the updated version on because it's now a part of a series and not just a standalone. But the book has been so good, and I've been really enjoying it. So I'm just going to dive right in. I'm reading it out loud with permission from the author. And it's been so much fun to be able to read it out loud, still have my reactions, still talk to you guys about it. But get to read it out loud instead of reading it in my head so you guys actually know what's going on. So I am just going to dive right into it. And if you guys have questions, if you guys want to drop in and say hi, feel free. I am going to continue on with reading The Baby Catcher Gate by Wendy Jo Cerna. I'm currently on chapter 21, Crystal Clear, page 228 in my Kindle, and I am about 70% of the way through. So we are just going to, let me pop up the picture of the cover and name and author, and I'm just going to get going. And also I adjusted where my mic is a little bit, so it's a little bit closer to my face, so hopefully the audio is better. The only thing I'm worried about is volume, but I'm hoping that having it closer to my mouth will help a little bit, but I'll try not to make any weird noises. Okay, chapter 21, Crystal Clear. Sunday arrived, dripping in sparkling white crystals like a designer evening gown. The sun's dazzling winter rays drove the temperature from the teens in the morning to near freezing by midday. Melting snow trickled from the eaves, forming long, glinting icicles along the roofline. Frank, the snowman's left eye, slid an inch lower than the right, and his body listed slightly to the left. Mother woke me early. "Up and at 'em, Missy. We're going to have to walk to church this morning," she announced. Missing church was only acceptable in cases of documented illness, national emergencies, or natural disasters. I was not sick, the communists had not invaded, and a foot and a half of snow did not meet the standard for a natural disaster in our neck of the woods. So we bundled up and trudged the mile and a half to our Savior's, where a Dodge pickup with a snowplow blade attached to the front had just begun to clear the vacant parking lot. Mr. Alder, the janitor and snowplow operator, waved at us as he scraped by, then pointed to the sidewalk leading to the front door. That must have been his first project of the morning, because it was free from snow and sprinkled with salt. We waved back and headed past the snowmobiles lined up along either side of the walkway. Inside the first set of double doors, several sets of cross-country skis and poles stood propped up along the wall. I knew one pair belonged to Mrs. Swenson, the organist who lived 5 miles out of town. Whenever a winter storm blew in a fresh blanket of snow, this was her preferred mode of transportation, and judging by the tempo and volume of the first hymn, her morning expedition had produced its usual vigorous results. The diminished congregation of about 30 or so responded to her leading with wholehearted 4-part harmony. Pastor Art called it truly inspired. I thought the entire worship service was more spirited than usual. Maybe it was because only the most zealous members had braved the journey to church that day, but it was probably more directly related to the fact that we had all just had a glamorous venture through the snow, regardless of our chosen mode of transportation. Pastor Art preached on a passage from Philippians 4, which said we should not be anxious about anything, but instead we should pray and let God in on all of our cares. As I sat in the pew next to Mother, I silently practiced what he preached. I offered up my list of worries, my dream about Ben, the fight with Reggie, the tidbits about Elle's dad, the upcoming art event, the anxieties about who was saying what about whom. And the peace that passes understanding slowly won out over all my circumstances. Despite my bulky snow boots, I felt 10 pounds lighter. After the service, we mingled with our friends and neighbors in the fellowship hall, swapping stories of inches measured, snowmen built, firewood chopped, and streets traversed. Then everyone suited back up for their journeys home. Mother grabbed a styrofoam cup of coffee to go, and I scooped up 2 brownies, carefully stashing one in my pocket out of Mother's view. We stopped to watch Mrs. Swenson strap on her skis and to wish her a safe journey as she shushed through the parking lot. When we arrived home, we grabbed the shovels from the shed and shifted into our roles of snow removal personnel. Mr. Schmidt's driveway was already immaculately clear, and he was busy pushing his snowblower up and down Mrs. Runquist's drive. "Why can't we just wait for Mr. Schmidt to help?" I asked. When you're 87 and a widow like Mrs. Runquist, you can sit inside and wave at your helpful neighbor. But for now, a bit of hard work won't hurt you, replied Mother. We started on the front steps and moved methodically down the driveway. As we were about to declare the job finished, the city snowplow pushed down our street and deposited a hard mound of snow and ice at the end of the driveway. I groaned at the sight of it and flopped backward in despair onto the snow-covered lawn. Hey, Mother chided, you can't quit on me now, we're almost done. I swung my arms up and down and my legs back and forth in the pristine blanket of white. Oh, I see, Mother laughed. You have decided this is the perfect moment to make a snow angel. Yep. She moved across the driveway and offered me a hand. Come on, Angel, let's finish up this job and get something to eat. She pulled me upright and handed me my shovel. Despite the heaviness of the snow, it didn't take us very long to clear a sizable opening to the street. As we finished, I turned to Mother with what had wriggled into my heart once all worries had emptied out. I think I want to display the baby sketches, I stated. Mother quirked her head to the side. What brought you to that decision? Did something tip the scales? Well, I've got another baby to draw. Her head popped upright. Really? What baby is this? You know the dream I had the other night? The one that you had to wake me up from? She nodded. It was about Ben, but it was also about his brother, his baby brother who died. I saw him, and in the dream, Ben told me his name was Daniel, and then yesterday I found out that's his name for real. I see, Mother said, and understanding lit her face. Is this what the conversation at the table with Ben was all about? Mm-hmm. He even showed me a picture of Daniel he carries in his wallet. It was the baby in my dream, the exact same one. Well, isn't that something? Mother spoke under her breath as she wiped beads of sweat from under her stocking cap. So, seeing this baby, this Daniel, how did it influence your decision? I leaned onto the shovel handle. Well, I guess seeing Daniel and knowing that what I saw was actually true to life. I guess I'm beginning to understand that maybe this is a gift and not a weird disorder or something. I mean, I knew Joseph's name before anyone told me, but I also had seen what Joseph looked like, at least pretty much. Even though seeing him alive was way different from seeing him, like he was at first. And I know what I saw when I dreamed about Timothy and Siobhan, but I've never actually seen them. But with Daniel, I know what I saw and what I heard is the real deal. Why would God show me that? Maybe I'm supposed to share it. I think it could help people the same way it helped Ben and Violet, right? Mother smiled and put her arm around my shoulder. I think what you're thinking is good thinking, sweetheart. Now let's go warm up and get a snack. Then we'll call Teacher Ann. Deal? Deal. It's funny how when you make a big decision, things start to happen. Some things seem to say, good decision, go for it. Others seem to say, what the heck are you thinking? Abandon ship. The hours between Sunday afternoon and Tuesday evening offered up some of each. The first positive reinforcement came later that evening as I sat at the kitchen table drawing Daniel peeking out of Ben's backpack. Mother was puttering around the kitchen after supper, drying dishes and wiping countertops when the phone rang. She dried her hands on the towel hanging from the fridge handle and answered the call. I was surprised when she gave the phone to me. Your sister says she wants to speak to you first. I dropped the cerulean blue pencil, popped up from my chair, grabbed the receiver, and moved hastily to the living room for a semi-private conversation. I began my line of questioning before my rear end hit the couch's velour cushions. Susan, did you do it? Did you call him? Did you go out on a date? Well, hello to you too, kiddo, Susan said. Yeah, hi. Now let's get down to the good stuff. So did you? Wow, you are a no-nonsense girl, aren't you? She commented, and then paused, keeping me on the edge of my couch. So here's your no-nonsense answer. Yes, I did. Woohoo! I hollered as I flopped back against the couch and raised one arm overhead in elation. Mother stuck her head into the room. I shooed her away. She retreated to the kitchen with a shrug, and I resumed my examination. Where did you go? What did you do? Was it fun? Was he nice? Did he kiss you? Good golly, Miss Molly, calm down and I'll tell you. For the next 20 minutes, she described her date with Scott Stewart. I curled up on the couch and pulled the crocheted afghan around my shoulders, ready for every detail. Scott had taken her out to eat at a cozy Italian restaurant. They sat and talked so long the waitstaff turned out the lights on them. Then he drove her home, and they sat in his car outside her apartment and talked with the car running for another hour. While they were sitting there, it started to snow big, fluffy flakes. Scott asked if she wanted to grab some boots and go for a walk. She did. When she came back out of her apartment, she found him fully winterized with cold weather gear he stored in his trunk. They walked and talked as the city turned into a magical, muffled winterscape around them. It was as if we were walking around inside a big, beautiful snow globe, she confided in a breathy tone. I sat spellbound, living every moment in my mind's eye. How late was it when you got home? I prompted. She seemed to have gotten lost in the memory of her winter wonderland. Oh, I don't know, maybe around 2 o'clock or so, she said. And? I prodded. And what? And did he kiss you good night? If blushes could be heard, I'm quite sure I heard one over the long-distance phone line that night. Hey, some things are private, she asserted. Oh, so he did kiss you. I knew it. I knew you two had hit it off. You can thank me now, or you can thank me later, when you name your first daughter after me. She giggled like she was my age. Okay, short stuff, enough prying. I've fulfilled my vow to you and reported on my first date with Scott Stewart. Truth be told, it wasn't our very first date. We went out once in high school, kind of, with 8 other people from yearbook club to a roll arena. Wait, what? You were an item in high school? No, not really, she laughed. I think it was more of a distant crush. He was 2 years younger than me. I didn't want to be accused of robbing the cradle. But that was long ago, and now 2 years doesn't matter. And I think maybe that crush isn't quite so distant anymore. Wow. I had set up my sister, and it was love at first sight. Or maybe second sight. But it was definitely love. Or at least a serious like. But hey, Susan resumed in her regular grown-up voice, there's something I need to ask you. Okay. You know those pictures you drew from Scott's photo at the art event? Yeah, what about 'em? Well, I'm wondering if you could send me copies like the one you sent me of Joseph. I told Scott you saw that night. I told Scott what you saw that night. I hope that's okay. He's really curious. He'd love to compare your sketches of those babies to some photos he's got. He's a bit skeptical about the whole thing, but he's open to investigating. What do you say? I didn't blame him for being skeptical. It was a pretty wild thing to ask someone to believe. I probably wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't been there. And although I was a bit upset that she had told him without asking me, my curiosity outweighed my irritation. Would the sketches of Timothy and Siobhan be close to the real pictures? Yeah, okay. I'll have Mother make a few copies and we'll send them to you. Great, can't wait to see them. Do you know the story behind those photographs? Just that Scott took them at Children's Hospital in some kind of volunteer work. That's right. He has a student whose mother is a nurse in the NICU at Children's, the neonatal intensive care unit. When she saw Scott's work, she asked him if he would be willing to volunteer his services there. They try to keep a photographer on call for families whose babies are failing or stillborn. It's a way to capture precious moments for those parents and give them something tangible to take home with them. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that sounds amazing and super intense. I don't know if I could do that. Scott says it's one of the hardest things he's ever done, and one of the most rewarding at the same time. I'm guessing it's one of those places Mother would call a thin place. I cradled the phone against my ear. Hey, Susan, I said. Maybe I should send extra copies in case Scott wants to give them to the parents. Now it was Susan's turn to be quiet for a time. Yeah, good idea. That might be a really cool thing for them to see. She paused and then added, Thanks, kiddo. Now, can you put Mother on the phone? I handed the phone to Mother as I walked into the kitchen and sat at the table to resume my sketching. Daniel's face peeped up at me. He seemed to say, Tag, you're it. Negative reinforcement banged at our front door right around 8 p.m. Mother had just finished watching 60 Minutes when the pounding started. Are you expecting someone? Mother asked, switching off the television. I shook my head. We headed to the front door together. A man's stocking cap was visible through the half circle of glass at the top of the door. Mother instinctively pulled me behind her back before opening the door about 6 inches. Can I help you? Already helped enough, came the brusque reply. You and that daughter of yours. Mr. Olson, I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about. Elle's dad? Don't pretend like you don't know, said Mr. Olson, his voice growing heated. Dad, you promised you'd be nice, Elle pleaded from somewhere behind her dad. I grabbed the door from Mother's hand and swung it open. Elle, are you okay? I asked. I'm sorry, Pearl. He insisted I bring him. He promised he'd be reasonable. Mr. Olson, Mother took charge. I am open to discussing any situation with you, but you must calm down. He grabbed his hat from where it sat atop his carrot-red hair and wrung it in his hands. Sorry, don't mean to be so mean, just that... Suddenly his anger melted into tears. Can't seem to get over it. She's gone, and he's gone too. He hung his head. Mother hesitated and then opened the screen door. I think perhaps you should come in. Elle ushered her dad into the entryway. The smell of beer filled the air. Have you been drinking, Mr. Olson? Mother asked. He shook his head. Dad, Elle urged. Well, okay, he conceded. Just a few Millers. Then let me put on some coffee. Pearl, show Elle and her dad into the front room, please. I clutched Elle's hand and led the way. It's going to be okay, I whispered to her, hoping that was truly the case. The moment had come to separate fact from fiction. Mr. Olson unzipped his coat and plopped onto the couch. Elle and I scrunched together onto the recliner, our hands still intertwined, and her coat buttoned at the top. She was shivering. While the coffee is brewing, Mother said as she entered the room, maybe you can tell me what this is all about. She pulled the other armchair from across the room to the side of the coffee table opposite from Mr. Olson and sat down. Won't be no surprise to you, he began, his hat still twirling between his thick fingers. I'm here to talk about Violet. Mother nodded. Her features told me that she was not, in fact, surprised to hear this. Elle gripped my hand tighter. Her baby, the one who died, he was my baby. He looked into Mother's eyes, a mixture of defiance and pain written across his freckled features. I'm sorry for your loss, Mother said. Her gentle response seemed to turn aside what might have been coming. He hung his head and wept again. I knew it weren't right and all, he said between sobs, but I loved her. And that old husband of hers, he's a son of a Mr. Olson, Mother cut him off. In my house, such language is not allowed. If you want to continue this conversation, please watch yourself. He blew his nose into a crumpled hanky he'd pulled from his coat pocket. Sorry, ma'am, but it's the truth. He ain't no good for her. That is not mine to judge. Why don't you compose yourself, and I'll get that coffee. Elle leaned her head onto my shoulder as if she could hold it up no longer. I knew that drunken scenes were not uncommon for her and her dad, but for me it was a whole new world. I sat spellbound by the drama, fascinated and terrified at the same time. Mother returned with a steaming mug. It's black, she said, handing it to him. His big mitts wrapped around the mug until it almost disappeared. He stared into the blackness before taking a sip. "Thanks kindly," he said. We all waited for him to take the next step. "She was going to divorce him, and once that was all done, we were going to go to Vegas and tie the knot, make us a real family, me and her, and the baby." "I see," Mother said. He took another sip and set the mug on the coffee table, drifting into silence. "But that didn't turn out the way you had planned," Mother prompted. He shook his head. Never even got to see him. Vi said he had hair just like mine." Tears streamed down his face once more. I don't know if it was the agony of watching a grown man cry or simply the need to feel useful, but I released Elle's hand and got up from the chair. "I'll be right back," I assured her. I left the living room and returned with my sketch of Joseph. Mr. Olson," I said, approaching the couch, "I don't know if this would help or not, but I did get to see your son. And, well, it's kind of a long story, but I drew a picture of him. Would you like to see?" His bleary eyes looked at me as though he couldn't understand, but he reached a hand out for the sketch nonetheless. He stared and stared at my sketch for what seemed like half an hour, although it was probably more like a minute or two. Finally, he gazed back at me. "Looks like he's alive, but that can't be." I took a deep breath and sat on the couch beside him. "Do you want me to tell you why he looks so alive?" Elle leaned forward on the recliner and unbuttoned her coat. "I do," she said. "Okay," he said, his eyes glued again to the image of his infant son. I glanced at Mother. She nodded her encouragement, her lips already aflutter in noiseless prayer. Once again, I recounted the story of Joseph and the baby catcher gate. Elle and her dad listened intently. When I reached the end of my summary of that night, Elle came and sat on the other side of her dad. "Can I see it?" she asked, pointing to the picture. Suddenly, Mr. Olson's eyebrows furrowed. He flung the sketch across the room. "I don't believe it." He stood up and kicked the coffee table, sending coffee splashing everywhere and my bowl flying into the air. Mother reached to stabilize the coffee mug. My bowl fell to the carpet, rolled, and smacked up against the TV stand with a sickening crunch. I leapt up. "Why'd you do that?" I barked at Mr. Olson as I ran to retrieve my bowl. "Sorry about that. Wait, what am I saying? I ain't got nothing to be sorry about. You're the ones that killed my boy." "Dad, stop." Elle reached for his arm and he slapped her hand away. "Don't you tell me what to do." "Mr. Olson, you either get a hold of yourself or you leave. Right now." Mother stood with both hands on her hips. "I don't gotta listen to you either," he said, stepping around the end of the coffee table. "Shoulda never let Vi go to you, you crazy baby catcher, and your crazy daughter. There ain't no gate in heaven for bastards." He moved closer and closer to Mother. Elle gripped the back of his coat and tried to pull him back. "Stop it," she yelled. He swung around and knocked her to the couch. "Pearl, call 911, Mother ordered, going around the other side of the coffee table to pull Elle into her arms. I ran to the phone and dialed, fingers trembling. Mr. Olson stared at Mother and Elle for a long moment, then barged out of the living room and ran for the front door. As he stood in the threshold, he yelled back at us, "Don't you be spreading your pack of lies around town, or you'll be hearing from me." The door slammed and he was gone. Mother drove Elle and me to school together the next morning, red-eyed and exhausted. After talking to the sheriff and calling Elle's mom the night before, I'd rolled out a sleeping bag for Elle in my room, and we'd talked until the wee hours. The few winks of sleep I had managed to get weren't very restful, and I suspected the case was true for Elle as well. I was relieved to finally have all the cards on the table with her, but I certainly was not excited about the way they'd been dealt. The strange encounter with her dad had given me a new appreciation for my friend Elle, and all the things she quietly endured. Turns out we both had secrets, ones that intertwined with one another in a peculiar fashion. I wasn't sure how good it would be for those secrets to get out. Mr. Olson's threat echoed in my mind over and over. Elle had tried to reassure me that it was all just hot air, that her dad would never hurt a fly, but I wasn't so sure. I'd seen how quickly his temper flared, and even though he hadn't hurt Elle physically, he easily could have. Maybe that only happened when he was drunk, but how often was that? I didn't know, and I didn't care to find out. All day long as I wandered through my classes, I seriously considered reneging on my offer to Teacher Anne. My fears were no longer just about a bully like Reggie Dumfrey might do to sully my reputation if he found out all there was to know about me. Now they were about a full-grown bully like Mr. Olson might do. Oh my gosh. Now they were what a fully grown bully like Mr. Olson might do to physically harm me or my mom. Or Elle if my story about Joseph were to become public knowledge. Of course, I would never divulge that Mr. Olson was Joseph's dad, though apparently that wasn't such a big secret anyway. Elle begged me to keep it to myself. She was embarrassed that I knew, and she didn't want anyone else to know. "No one else could possibly understand my situation," she said the night before. I knew that wasn't true. I looked for Ben throughout the day, but didn't find him. I felt that Elle might find comfort in his story, but it wasn't mine to tell. The final bell of 7th period ended, and I was no closer to sorting out the pieces of my strange world than when I had gotten out of bed that morning. Someone somewhere in a much higher place must have known I needed some encouragement. When I got home from school and walked into the kitchen, the day's mail was piled on the table. Propped up against the napkin holder stood an envelope addressed to me. I snatched it up to see who it might be from. The label in the upper left corner said Peterson. The return address was in a town called Little Prairie. My curiosity was piqued, but I forced myself to put it down while I grabbed a cheese stick and apple slices from the fridge. Then I sat down with my snack, ripped open the envelope, plopped an apple slice in my mouth, and unfolded the letter. It was written on crisp white stationery, fringed with purple and adorned with a clump of lilacs in the upper corner. A pleasant aroma wafted from the page. I took a sniff. Lilacs. I turned the sheet over. It was signed at the bottom with "Sincere gratitude, Mrs. Peterson." I stripped off a chunk of cheese and chewed as I read. Dear Pearl, I am writing to say thank you once again to you and your mother for how you helped this family get through a very tough time. Your care and courage have meant more than you know. I realize Joseph's birth was difficult for you and your mother too. I'm truly sorry it worked out the way it did for everyone involved. But we want you to know we do not blame his death on the care he received that night. Violet told me later that she had a feeling something was wrong. She had started spotting days before she went into labor, and the baby's movements had slowed way down. Don't know why she didn't let me or your mother know, knowing something might have been done much sooner. Anyway, after the coroner examined Joseph's body, he let us know that Joseph had probably died just an hour or so before birth, due to a total placental abruption. Your mother will know what that means. He was pleased to hear that Violet survived. Thought you two might need to know this information. Also, wanted to let you know Violet has moved from her place and is now living with her brother Vernon and his wife on their farm. She wanted to get away and make a fresh start of things. I, too, am staying here for a few weeks to make sure she is settled. She helps around the house and has even gone out to help Vernon with his chores recently. This is good for her. She still has days where the grief takes her down pretty low, but she doesn't stay there real long. The picture you drew of Joseph is framed and hangs at the end of her bed, where she can see it first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Can't tell you what a great gift that is for her and for all of us, to see Joseph as he is, healthy and happy, and to know he's being taken care of with such love and such is surely a treasure. On top of all that, knowing my sister Maggie is there caring for him has freed my heart from a pain I didn't even know I still carried. I know the bump on your head and the time in the hospital wasn't fun for you, but you need to know that the experience you had of life beyond this life is a precious gift, and your ability to capture what you saw on paper is a true gift as well. I am praying God will give you wisdom beyond your years to know how to share your gifts with others. Please give my most tender regards to your mother. With sincere gratitude, Mrs. Peterson. I pondered her words as I munched another apple slice and skimmed back through the letter. She was right. I needed wisdom beyond my years. Way beyond. I set the letter down and went into the living room. The sketch of Joseph still lay on top of the stereo where Mother had placed it last night, but my bowl, chipped and fractured by the fall, was nowhere to be found. Oh my gosh. Ooh. Okay, interlude. Pua. The interludes are all people that are in heaven. So, this is Pua from the Bible. Shades of indigo, chartreuse, plum, and saffron saturate the garments of the small group of women gathered in front of Ilsa's home. Gemstones, large and small, glitter from the top of their heads to the tips of their toes. If women were breathtakingly beautiful on earth, as I know they are, then I have insufficient vocabulary to describe their essence beyond the pearl gates. Their gay chatter reaches William and me as we cross the expansive golden boulevard and approach the group. Ilsa waves us into their midst. Come and join us, she urges. This is my son-in-law John and grandson William, she says to the other women who have turned to greet us. One holds a baby wrapped in a brocade blanket in her arms. Nearly hidden behind the other's skirts is a curly-headed little boy. He peeks at us from behind the purple fabric. William kneels beside him. Hey there, he says to the young lad. Want to meet a friend of mine? The little guy looks up at me and shakes his head. Will laughs. Not that guy, he whistles, and reaches out his hand. I meant this guy. A bluebird appears from nowhere and alights on his finger. The little boy's eyes beam. You can pet him. Will holds the bird close enough for the boy to reach. His name is Oliver. A tiny hand reaches out from the skirt and touches the bird's head. Hi, Oliver, he says. I'm Daniel. The bird twitches his head to the side. Daniel leans in until he and Oliver are eye to eye. Then the bird opens his mouth and a warbling melody fills the air. Daniel claps his hands and jumps up and down. Do it some more! Do it some more! Oliver complies. He likes you, Will says. Not everybody gets a song out of him as soon as they meet. And not everybody gets Daniel's name out of him at first meeting, the woman in the purple skirt says. Well done, young man. You are more than welcome to join us under his wing if you'd like to help with some of the other youngsters. William transfers his feathered friend to Daniel's outstretched arm. Just pet him gently and he'll stay right there, he instructs the lad, who eagerly does as he is told. Will stands up and turns to him. I think I'd like that. Can I? I appeal to Ilsa, whose domain I know this to be. I'm sure that can be arranged, she says. Delightful. The woman reaches out her hand and shakes William's. My name is Pua, by the way. You've grown up since you passed through my line at the gate. Yes, ma'am, William replies. I've heard a lot about you from Grandma. Can't say that I remember meeting you, though. Pua laughs. No, most of the tiniest ones don't, and that is all fine and good. We'd like to get you connected to your baby catcher as quickly as possible and get you situated behind the gate. Speaking of our work, let me introduce you to one of my finest coworkers. She turns to the young woman dressed in cobalt blue who holds the bundled baby. This is Maggie, and the little fellow sleeping in her arms is her nephew Joseph. Hello, Maggie says as she sways slightly from side to side in her role as a cradle. I like your bird, she says to Will. Want to hold it? Daniel says, lifting Oliver upward. Maggie smiles. That's okay, I've got my hands full right now, but maybe later? Okay, he says, I'm really good at sharing. I'm sure you are, she replies. Are you ladies venturing out somewhere? I ask. Pua pulls a small scroll from her waistband. We've been summoned to Bethel, she says as she hands me the scroll. I unroll it, and William appears over my shoulder to read the words inscribed there. Is that where Jacob's ladder is? Will asks her. Jacob just told my class all about it. She smiles. Yes, Bethel is the gateway between heaven and earth, where the heavenly hosts ascend and descend. Are you going there to watch them? William asks. We don't know for certain, Pua says. As you can see on the scroll, I was simply asked to gather these women and children and go to the gateway. Beyond that, I do not know. We will await further instructions once we arrive. Have you been there before? I ask Ilska, intrigued by this summons. She shakes her head. Never, but I'm excited to go. Me too, Maggie adds. Any idea why the summons came now? I say, turning to Pua, who is the head of the contingency. Not completely, but it has been my experience that activity at this portal seems to be particularly busy during a season of overflow. Daniel tugs on Will's pant leg. Can you come with us? And Oliver too? William looks to Pua. She smiles. I don't see why not. And bring your dad too. The more the merrier. But the summons... I hand the scroll back to her. Did you read the fine print? She asks, rolling it back up and returning it to its place in her waistband. I look at William. He looks at me. We shake our heads. Pua chuckles. I have sat under Jacob's teaching too, and if I learned anything from him, it was this. Always read the fine print. What does it say? Will blurts. She speaks slowly and clearly with a twinkle in her eyes. For those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Does that mean us? I ask, as eager as Will to be included in this venture. Do you see anyone else standing around asking questions? Pua laughs and puts her hand on my arm. It would appear that you have been summoned as well. Daniel jumps up and down. Oliver flies above us in circles as William kneels to pull Daniel onto his back. Let's go, Daniel prods Will. I want to see the big ladder. Oh, I love that, actually. That's so good. Everybody come in close, put a hand in the middle, and close your eyes, Pua instructs. We obey. To Bethel, she whispers into our little circle, and when we fly as one on the wings of her command. Chapter 22. Accepting the Call. Ben wasn't at school on Tuesday, nor did he return my calls from the day before. I was growing concerned and might have been downright worried if I hadn't been so anxious about my looming obligations in the hours ahead. I skittered through my day at school like a butterfly on Mountain Dew. Mentally, I flitted in and out of classes and conversations, unable to focus or comprehend much of anything. I may as well have stayed at home, but that would have been disastrous. School, at least, offered legitimate distractions that held me back from a total panicked freefall. As I walked through the door to Miss Wells's class, Tiffany pulled me aside. I heard what Ben did to Reggie, she whispered, wide-eyed with wonder. I shrugged and glanced over her shoulder to make sure Mr. Dumfrey wasn't right behind her. Yeah, well, Reggie deserved it, I whispered back. I'm sure, she grabbed my hand. I just wanted to say, I'm glad someone finally stood up to him, she said with a squeeze before being lining for her desk. You could have knocked me over with a feather as I wandered to my seat, just about the time I thought I had figured her out. Penny for your thoughts, Peculiar? Reggie said, oh, just kidding. Read that in a completely wrong voice. That's one of those things that's hard about reading out loud, is I don't know who's saying what because it always is like the quote and then the person. And so sometimes like that instance, I'll say it completely the wrong way. Because I'm not doing like completely different voices, but there's a different sort of inflection to it. But anyways, that's funny. I can't remember. I was going to clip that. Maybe I'll just do, did I do Clee? Did I do C? I don't remember. Okay. Penny for your thoughts, Peculiar, Reggie said with a smirk as he passed by and slipped a piece of paper under my notebook. I pulled it out and opened it. Someday Romeo won't be there. The room started to spin. My heart sank to the vicinity of my kneecaps. Class, please take out your textbooks and open to page 142, Miss Wells instructed us. I crumpled up the note and stuffed it in my pocket. We will continue our study of the hero's journey, she said. Last week we talked about the first two stages, the call to adventure and the refusal of the quest. Who can tell me what the third stage is called? Tiffany's hand shot up. Yes, Miss Paulson, go ahead. The third stage is accepting the call, Tiffany offered confidently. Correct, and that is where we will begin our discussion today. My goal for this week is for us to get through this stage and move on to the next two stages, which are entering the unknown and supernatural aid. It was uncanny. If I didn't know better, I'd have thought Miss Wells had been camping in my bedroom and listening to my every cry. Just the night before, as I lay in bed, I'd protested to my stuffed kitty. They can't make me do this. I won't. I can't. I'm not gonna. After I'd shed a few tears, strangle, oh my gosh. It's strangle, no my gosh, I said it again. It's strange and tingling, and I combined them to say strangle. After I had shed a few tears, a strange tingling presence descended on my whole body, like an electric blanket. I looked around for any telltale golden shimmers in the corners of my room, but didn't see a thing. I lay there for a while, letting the tingling soak all the way into my heart, and then I'd whispered to the presence that I felt all around me, "Okay, I'll do it. But please, please, please help me. Let your kingdom come and your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." I'd accepted the call, and I was about to enter the unknown. My sincere hope was that supernatural aid was on the way. After school, Mother picked me up and we drove home to get my art piece and sketches. "Have you seen my bowl?" I asked Mother. I was searching the places I'd searched before, but with the same results. "Is it missing? I'm sure it will show up." "Let's get going," she said, handing me the box filled with the rest of my projects. A bit miffed by her lack of concern, I grabbed the box and trudged to the car behind her. We were headed to the high school cafeteria, where we would meet teacher and the other exhibitors to organize the artwork for the evening. On the way, Mother told me she had seen Ben and his mother at the hospital that day. "Is he all right?" I sputtered. "Yes, dear, he's fine," Mother assured me. "His grandfather is quite ill, though. He was admitted to the hospital on Sunday, and it appears to be very serious. They don't expect him to recover this time." "That's too bad," I said. My relief at hearing Ben was okay was tempered by the gloomy report about his grandfather. "Guess that explains why Ben hasn't called me back. I wish there was something we could do." "Well, there is," Mother replied. "We can pray." "Yeah, I know, but what are you supposed to pray when someone is dying?" I asked, not really expecting an answer. "You can pray for God's peace to be very present," Mother said without missing a beat, "and for physical pain to be removed. You can pray that the Holy Spirit will comfort the family. Ben's mom told me her dad was walking with the Lord for many years. The Bible says the death of a saint is precious in the sight of the Lord. This is a thin place for Ben and his family. Ask God to do special things for them in this time to help them know He sees them and cares for them." Whoops. I pondered her words, wondering if mothers everywhere possessed answers for everything, or if it was just my mother. When we arrived at the cafeteria, Fritz marched across the room to greet us. "Need some help there?" he asked. "Sure," I said, handing him my box. The objects rattled as he held it. His hands were trembling. "You okay, Fritz?" "Oh, yeah, I'm fine," he said, tucking the box back to his body to stop the shaking. Halfway across the cafeteria, he pulled to a halt. The sadness I'd seen the first time we met darkened his features. "Honestly," he whispered, "I wish this was all over. I'm as nervous as a cat in a sinking boat." I mustered up a smile I hoped appeared brave. "Sounds pretty nervous." "Yeah, it is. Then I'd say you and I are in the same boat." Something close to a smile touched his eyes. We resumed our trek together. I have heard that misery loves company. I don't know if that's true or not, but that day I found that nervousness sure does. Teacher saw us coming and strode over to give Mother and me a quick hug. "This is exciting." "N'est-ce pas?" she asked. It was more a statement than a question. Good thing, too, because my answer to her question would have been an emphatic no. But she didn't wait around for my input. She took off across the room, Fritz and my box in tow. Mother and I followed the parade. We greeted Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Grant, who were pulling easels, fabrics, and other props from plastic bins beside the long tables set up for our use. They were old pros at this, having displayed their work many times before at various venues. Teacher gathered us all together. "Each of you will have one table to display your individual pieces. This table," she said, tapping the one she stood beside, "is for our summer art class. Why don't we start here, then you can go off to your separate tables." Under Teacher Ann's watchful eye, we began to arrange and rearrange our summer projects. "Pearl," Mrs. Grant said in the midst of our activity, "where's your pottery piece? I've been looking forward to seeing the finished product, don't you know?" I struggled to come up with a simple answer. Teacher pulled a box out from under the table and handed it to me. "Why don't you open that up?" I thought she was just giving me something to do, but when I lifted the corners of the box, I couldn't believe my eyes. "My bowl! Where did you—" "Teacher Ann has had it in her repair shop," said Mother, who had been sitting quietly while watching us work. "Take a look. Just be gentle. The restoration is quite fresh," Teacher instructed. I didn't know how she did it, but the chip had been set back in place, and the fracture along the side was nearly undetectable. "That's a beauty," Fritz said. "Lovely," breathed Mrs. Grant. "Where'd you find the gold sparkles? I didn't see those among our glaze choices," Mrs. Wilson added. I shook my head. "I don't know. It just came out of the kiln that way." I looked over at Mother and Teacher. "Thanks. Our display wouldn't have been complete without it," Teacher said. "Here's a perfect spot for it." She indicated a place among the other pottery pieces. I set the bowl down gently, and we all stepped back to admire our work. I had been anxious about having my art compared so closely to the others, but when we combined everything, the variety of interpretations and ability levels melded together into its own artistic statement, something like art for all ages and all ages for art. I must have spoken it out loud, because Mrs. Wilson promptly urged me to put the phrase on a banner to hang on the table's edge. The others agreed. Finished with the group display, we each moved to our tables. I was mortified to think of how little I had to show, compared with my classmates' work. But when Mother and I approached the table designated for me, we realized Teacher had prepared for this inequity. My table was small and round as opposed to long and rectangular. All their tables were covered in black tablecloths, but mine also had a layer of frothy white fabric that made it look as though a cloud had landed on top of it. Rising out of the cloud at various heights stood 3 silver easels. As Mother and I stood inspecting it, Teacher came up behind us. "Let's see what it looks like with your sketches in place," she said, prompting me forward. "You decide where each piece goes." "Okay, but I actually have 4 sketches." "You do?" Teacher said. "Yeah, another baby," I said with a shrug, "and another long story." "How exciting! Let me check with the ladies and see if they have an extra easel," she said as she trotted off. I opened my folder and contemplated what I should do. I placed Joseph's picture on the highest easel in the middle of the table, since he was the first baby I had captured on paper. Timothy and Siobhan sat side by side on easels to the left. I pulled them together at an angle. "Here we go," Teacher said, raising a small golden easel overhead as she trotted back to my table. I set it opposite of Timothy and Siobhan and placed the picture of Daniel on it. I admired the way the frothy fabric curved up against the bottom of his picture. It looked as if the backpack's opening arose out of a cloud. I stepped back to check out my presentation. "Ooh la la," Teacher said as she leaned in for a closer look. "What a handsome young chap. Can't wait to hear the story behind this one." Mother tilted her head back and forth. "I think it's lovely. What do you think, sweetheart?" As I chewed a fingernail, trying to decide what I thought, Teacher raised a hand and said, "Wait, I almost forgot." She swept off to the front of the room and came back with a black velvet pouch in her hands. "Let's see what happens when I add these." She pulled out a long strand of pearls and tucked them around the easels until it appeared as if pearly dewdrops were dripping from the cloud. She stepped back and stretched out her arms. Voila! It was perfect. I looked into Teacher's sparkling eyes and simply nodded. I was so delighted I forgot to be nervous for a minute, but my peaceful moment evaporated when Teacher pulled out a 3x5 card from her cardigan pocket. "Now don't leave without this list of questions," she said. I accepted the card from her hand and read the 3 questions. "What is your favorite type of art to make? When did you start doing this? Why is art important to you?" I glanced from the card into Teacher's face. I must have looked like a deer caught in the headlights because she reached out hastily and put her hands on my shoulders. "Pearl, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to," she said, "but I thought it might be good for you to have these questions in advance. Just take them home and think it over, okay?" I stared blankly at her. The butterflies had been in my stomach all day, metamorphized into a herd of stampeding musk oxen. I dropped the card and sprinted across the cafeteria full throttle, thankful I knew precisely where the restrooms were located. As I fled, I heard Mother reassure Teacher. "She'll be all right. She just needs some space to process." Maybe Mother doesn't know everything after all, I thought before I crashed through the door marked women. Excuse me. Only after I had emptied the contents of my stomach and washed my face did I see the scuffed orange clogs. They were barely noticeable under the door of the last stall. I was embarrassed and about to make a quick anonymous exit when I realized something. One sole was thicker than the other. I knew those clogs. "Elle?" I asked tentatively. No answer. "Elle, is that you?" "Pearl?" came the timid response. "Yeah, it's me, your favorite barfing friend." I thought I might get a laugh. She remained silent. "Elle, are you okay?" Quiet sniffles. No words. "Are you crying?" Louder sniffles. "Hey, open the door. It's just me." Another minute passed before the latch slid back and the door opened. Elle sat fully clothed on the toilet. Her eyes were bloodshot and vacant. I approached her slowly and squatted down. "What's going on?" I asked, placing a hand on her corduroy knee. "Aren't you supposed to be at debate club?" She began to sob. I reached up and pulled her into a hug. "It's okay, Elle. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." I spoke with more assurance than I felt. Since the scene with her dad, I hadn't realized that her life was, well, complicated. Perhaps debate had nothing to do with her despair. Perhaps it was something way more complex than I was equipped to handle. I didn't know, but I had to try. Her sobs subsided as I held her. She pulled back and grabbed a handful of tissue paper to clean up her dripping nose. I waited. She finally looked me in the eye. "I can't," she said. "You can't what?" "I can't go back." "Back where? Home?" She shook her head. "Debate club?" She nodded. "Why not?" "Because it's no use. I'm no good." Her chin dropped. She blew her nose. "Are you kidding me? You're the smartest, best debater in town. Everybody knows that." "Not true," she said, shaking her head. "What do you mean? How else did you get onto the JV high school team as a 7th grader?" "I did, but that was before." "Before what? Come on, just tell me what's going on." "That was before I actually had to debate someone. Last week, the first meet, I froze. I couldn't defend my position. I couldn't even say my name." "You? You always have words for everything." "Well, apparently not when it matters." "Oh, come on, it couldn't have been that bad. You just had a little lapse. You'll get over it. Just give it some time." "No, I'm not exaggerating," she insisted. "I completely lost it. Mark Bukowski had to drag me off the stage. He dumped out the contents of his lunch sack and gave me the paper bag to breathe into. They stopped the meet and called the paramedics." I swallowed. Wow, that's intense. Yeah, I know. They all said the same thing as you. Give it another try, Elle. It was just a fluke, Elle. You'll be fine next time, Elle, she said, mimicking their patronizing tones. Well, next time was today, and the same thing just happened. Except this time, I got off the stage myself and ran. Ran right here, to wallow by myself. Mark yelled in the doorway once, looking for me, but I didn't answer. I was finally pulling it together when someone came barging in and puked their guts out. Oh, man, I said. I'm so sorry. I was in a complete panic myself. About what? Tonight, Art Appreciation Night. Elle looked chagrined. I'm sorry. I've been so engrossed in my world I completely forgot what you I completely forgot. Are you going to do it? I plopped down onto the floor. I thought I was, but I don't know if I can. Elle put her hand on my shoulder. I've been thinking about all you said the other night. You have? Yes, I have, and I think you should tell your story tonight. You do? Another feather knocking over moment. What about your dad? What about your family? I don't want to make things worse for you. I appreciate your concern, but let me state my case. People in this town are going to say what they want to say about my dad and Violet, even though they might not understand all the circumstances. And while I am not condoning their behavior, I believe that all of us have things we do that we are not proud of. No one has room to throw stones. People are also going to say what they want to say about you and your mother, too. But who cares? I know, and everyone who loves you knows, that you are some of the kindest and most caring people on the planet, and those are the opinions that matter. She may not have been able to debate on a stage, but seated on a throne in the bathroom, she was making quite an impact on her audience of one. What about your dad? Won't he be mad? Elle shrugged. Maybe, but he's always angry, and even though he talks big, I've never seen him carry through with any of his threats. Don't let him intimidate you. That's what my mother had to learn. And me, too. I pulled out the crumpled note that had been burning a hole in my pocket all day. What about this? I handed it to Elle. Crimson crept up her neck, absorbing her freckles all the way to her hairline as she read it. You must not back down in the face of fascist tyranny, she stated emphatically. Huh? Don't you see, Pearl? Tonight is your night to speak truth from a platform of influence. We cannot allow tyrants such as Reggie Dumfrey to terrorize us and keep us from enacting our right to free speech. The door to the bathroom swung open. Pearl, are you in here? Mother asked, peeking into the first stall. I spun around and poked my head out. Down here. She stopped, hands on hips. What on earth? I'm okay, I assured her, standing up and stepping out into the room. Elle followed me. What on earth? Mother repeated. Hi, Elle said quietly. What is going on? Mother persisted. It's my fault, I said. I came flying in here all freaked out. I threw up, and, well, Elle just happened to be in here. She's been calming me down, helping me work through stuff. Well, that is very fortunate to find a good friend in time of need, she remarked, turning to Elle. Thank you for your assistance. The assistance has gone both ways, Elle said, looping her arm through mine. We need to be going, Pearl. Need to have some dinner and get ready for tonight, Mother said. Okay, I replied. Can I just get a minute alone with Elle? It won't take long. I'll be right out. Mother nodded. Do you have a ride home, Elle? Yeah, my mom will be here soon, she said. Hope we'll see you tonight, Mother said as she exited. Is your mom really coming soon? I asked once Mother was out of earshot. In about an hour, when the meet is scheduled to be over, she shrugged. But it's okay. I should really go back to the auditorium and let everyone know that I have survived my disgrace. All right, I took a deep breath. Can you come tonight? I will do my best to attend. Shall I see if Mel is free as well? I'm not too sure what she'll think about it all, but sure. That would be great. Just seeing you guys in the room would be really helpful, I said. And Elle, I don't care what happened to you at the meet. I still think you're the best debater in town. She laughed. I think perhaps in encouraging you, I have found the courage I needed myself. She gave me a Mel-like hug. You are a true friend, no matter what. I hugged her tight. No matter what. The hours at home were agony. I tried to distract myself by making the banner for the group table, which worked for about a half an hour. When I was satisfied with the outcome, I showed it to Mother. Very nice, she remarked before moving on to finish supper preparations. We need to eat soon and get dressed. What are you going to wear? My mind ceased to function. My stomach twisted. I realized I'd completely overlooked this major decision. I don't know. What do you think I should wear? A dress or a skirt would be nice. Make sure to put on warm tights. It's going to get cold tonight. Go look in your closet. I'll call you when food is ready. I drifted toward my bedroom in a stupor. Halfway there, I stopped and went back to the kitchen. Would it be okay if I ate after the event? I asked. My stomach is not currently accepting any donations. Of course. I'm just making chili, and that's easy to warm up. Go work on your wardrobe choices. I'll check on you after a bit. I wandered into my room and slid open the mirrored closet doors. A colorful mass of pants, skirts, and tops and dresses hung before me. My eyes searched for a sign that said, I'm perfect, wear me. No such sign appeared. I decided to go with a skirt or dress, as Mother had suggested, thus narrowing my choices. Still, nothing popped out at me. I'm not sure how long I stood there in abject indecision. Before I knew it, Mother was pulling options out and laying them side by side on my bed. These are your most appropriate of choices. Any of them will be fine, she stated as she pulled my chin up and looked me in the eye. You need to make a decision soon so we have time to do something with your hair. She left me alone to ponder my alternatives. I tried on every piece of clothing lying on my bed, one by one. I stood before the mirror and promptly tore them off one by one until they were heaped in a pile of inside-out discards on the floor. I was generally not a girl given to histrionics, but at that time, my resolve I possessed dissolved. I flopped to the floor, dressed only in my underwear and training bra, which wasn't truly necessary, but helped me feel hopeful. I sat crisscross applesauce, dropped my head into my hands, and cried out, I don't want to do this anymore. I changed my mind. Don't make me do this. The picture of Elle breathing into a paper bag with paramedics by her side swiftly became a picture of Pearl breathing into a paper bag with paramedics by her side. I had retreated to the refusal of the quest. I began to sob. Mother's high heels clicked down the wood floor in the hallway. I sensed her in my doorway, but didn't lift my head. I wanted her to see in me in my misery and gain the full impact of my meltdown. She sighed, moved toward me, and stopped. She didn't say a word. In my curiosity, I reined in my sobs and raised my eyes a skosh to see if she was being... That's how you spell skosh? I'm pretty sure that's what the word is. And I've said skosh so many times in my life, but I did not think that that's how you spelled it. S-K-O-S-H. Well, the more you know. Clearly, Mother was not impressed. I took her hand and allowed her to pull me up out of my pity party. Go splash your face with cold water, she ordered. When you come back, you will pick up these clothes and hang them back on your hangers. Then I will help you make a decision. Understood? Yes, ma'am, I muttered on my way to the bathroom. When I got back, I did indeed pick up all the discarded clothes and hang them back on their hangers. I laid them next to Mother, who sat on my bed, arms crossed, waiting for me to finish. Here's the deal, she began. You committed to Teacher Anne as well as your classmates to participate in tonight's event. You will keep that commitment. I am hopeful you will be dressed in something more appropriate than what you currently have on. My suggestion is your jean skirt, your white Oxford shirt, and your lavender crew neck sweater. You always look very nice in that outfit. You have 5 minutes to come out of this room and whatever you decide. Are we clear? As a bell, I conceded. One more thing, she said, unfolding a crumpled piece of paper. I found this on the floor. Care to explain? No use trying to evade her. Reggie wrote it. Reggie Dumfrey? I nodded. Up to his old tricks. Who's Romeo? Ben? I nodded. I'll take care of this, she said as she stood. You just get ready. As she passed by on the way out the door, she muttered under her breath, One day I'd like to take that young man and... Unfortunately, I was out of earshot before she finished her threat, but it helped me feel better to know that she was on high alert regarding Mr. Dumfrey. I donned a pair of white wool tights, the jean skirt, the Oxford shirt, and the lavender sweater. I stood in front of the mirror. She was right. I slipped on my penny loafers and joined Mother in the bathroom. She leaned over the vanity counter toward the mirror, applying her makeup. Without skipping a stroke of mascara, she glanced my way and commented, Don't you look nice? I sat down on the blue-carpeted toilet seat to wait. Mother looked pretty in her slim black skirt and long-sleeved teal blouse caught in a bow under her chin. She softened the curls of her perm with a curling iron. The blonde waves with traces of gray at the temples stood perfectly coiffed at her face. I was resigned to the fact that I was going to participate in the art event, but I was still overwhelmed at the thought of it. I broached the subject again in a more reasonable fashion. I'm not sure I can do this. I feel nauseous even thinking about it. Sometimes the thinking about it is worse than the doing of it, Mother commented while she continued to apply her makeup. True. I felt a Mother pep talk coming on. Maybe you need to get your mind off yourself for a minute and think about how other people will be blessed by the gift God has given you. Teacher Anne has repeatedly told you that you don't need to stand up and deliver the Gettysburg Address, yet I do believe a few words from you could shed great light on the life behind your art. You have an opportunity tonight to let your story and your art bring honor to God and hope to people. In the Bible, it says that when you get called to stand before people, even very important people, you don't need to worry about what to say because God will fill your mouth. She spread a soft shade of plum lipstick across her lips and tamped down on a tissue to remove the excess. Then she grabbed a hairbrush and turned her sights to me. And this is what I know to be true. If we are bold enough to declare God's truth, he says he will confirm it with signs and wonders following. So consider that while I tackle your hair, she said. How about a French braid? I swiveled around to offer her the back of my head and relented to the stroke of the brush. She separated, tugged, and wove my hair into a tidy chestnut braid that ran down between my shoulder blades. The calm certainty of her movements soothed my agitated mind. For the first time that day, peace descended upon my heart. As she secured the end of the braid with a silky lavender scrunchie, a still small voice whispered into my innermost being, Do not fear, I am with you always. Once again, I accepted the call. Okay, I'm going back a second because I love what her mother said. Sometimes the thinking about it is worse than the doing of it. Maybe you need to get your mind off yourself for a minute and think about how other people will be blessed by the gift God has given you. I love that. I feel like that's a really good way to handle nerves too, or like even just negative emotions about something. Like even for instance, at my work, because I work at a restaurant, there's a bunch of different positions that you can work. Obviously, you can be a server, you can be a food runner, you can work on the bar, you can be the host. And I, to be honest, don't really like hosting, just because it's a lot of saying the same thing and you can often get some disgruntled guests because, you're having to tell them that they have to wait, could be anywhere. Like on Sunday, because it was Mother's Day, it was super busy, and, you're telling people that they could potentially have to wait like 3 hours to sit down. And so, it just comes with its nuances and its interesting things, and it's just hard to stand, you have to, stand in the same spot and say the same thing over and over and over again to a bunch of people, and you're the face of, they're your first person that people see when they walk in, and so you're trying to be welcoming and warm and all the different things, and so it's tiring. And so when I saw that I had gotten scheduled to host on Mother's Day, I was like, honestly kind of upset about it. Like, just, I don't want to do this. It's not, oh my gosh, it's going to be terrible, all these things. And I was playing it up in my mind, and what she said is totally sometimes the thinking about it is worse than the doing of it. And that's so true. 'Cause like, it was tough at times, but like, it was not that bad and it was fine. And even like getting your mind off of yourself for a minute and thinking how other people are going to be blessed. Not that me hosting at a restaurant is necessarily like this great gift that I've been given or whatever, but I am good at it. And, I was able to have conversations. I was able to remember somebody that had come in before and, remember their name and have a good conversation with them. And those are little things that I think we overlook sometimes, the little interactions that people can be absolutely blessed by. And so that I'm highlighting that just because I think that that's a good thing to remember, I would say. Okay. Chapter 23, Reinforcements. When Mother and I arrived at the cafeteria at 6:30 p.m., Fritz was tampering with the sound system while Mrs. Grant arranged lemon bars, brownies, and oatmeal scotchies on platters on the refreshment table. Mrs. Wilson was scooping coffee grounds into the large silver coffee makers perched on the stainless steel countertop behind her. Their husbands worked in tandem, unfolding black tablecloths and draping them over each table. We stood in the doorway, shedding our winter coats, when Teacher Anne appeared beside us, her arms laden with boxes of plastic cups and napkins. "Anne, let me help you with those," Mother offered as she snatched 2 boxes from the top of the stack. "Thanks, Lizzie. Let's give them back to the ladies at the refreshment table," Teacher said, heading in that direction. "You both look quite enchanting this evening. Love the French braid, Pearl." "Thank you," I replied. "You look lovely too," Mother added. "Ah, merci, mon ami," Teacher said, her best French accent accentuating her artsy look. Her hair was caught up in a twist secured with a dowel stuck through a leather oblong. Silver hoops dangled from her ears nearly to her shoulders. A long, sleeveless cardigan hung past her knees over a soft floral print blouse and voluminous black pants. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. "Sure is. Follow me and I'll give you an assignment," she said over her shoulder, the familiar scent of Shalimar perfume wafting out behind her. We trooped over toward the refreshment table. "You can hang your coats right there," Teacher said with a thrust of her chin. "How's it going here, ladies? I've brought some reinforcements." "Hello, hello," Mrs. Grant greeted us as she sliced up another pan of bars. "Don't you look pretty tonight?" "Pearl, you look so grown up," Mrs. Wilson commented. "I almost didn't recognize you." "Spin around, let me get a good gander at that hairdo," Mrs. Grant insisted. I turned around, awkwardly aware that my cheeks had grown pink. "I never could figure out how to do that with my girl's hair," Mrs. Grant remarked to Mother. "Never had any girls to even try it on," Mrs. Wilson said with a wistful sigh. "Tell you what," Mother said, "when that little granddaughter of yours gets older, I'll give you a tutorial." "If I can get her to sit still long enough," Mrs. Wilson said. "She's a whirlwind." Teacher Anne interrupted the small talk. "Pearl, here's a job for you." She handed me 2 cardboard signs with arrows on the bottom that read, "Art Appreciation Night, this way." "Please take these and pin them up," she said, giving me a clear plastic box of pushpins. "I need 1 posted on the bulletin board by the main entrance and 1 on the board at the end of the hallway leading to the cafeteria. We want to make sure our guests don't get lost." I grabbed the signs and pins and headed out, glad to have a task to keep me occupied. In the entryway by the main doors, I stood beside a big bulletin board, deliberating where to place a sign amidst the clutter already occupying the space, when someone behind me called out, "Pearl!" I swung around. Coming through the big glass entry doors was Ben. The box of pushpins dropped from my hand and hit the tile. Pins exploded across the floor in all directions. "Well, I can see my sudden appearance still brings out the best in you," he teased. "Let me help." He bent down and started to collect the shrapnel from my pushpin box bomb. "Oh my gosh, sorry about this mess. I can't believe I did that. I just didn't expect to see you. But I'm so glad you came," I babbled. "That's all right," he said. "I should have warned you, but I wasn't sure it would work out. I've only got a minute. My mom is waiting outside. We have to go right back to the hospital." "Yeah, I heard about your grandpa. Sorry about that, too. We've been praying for you. How's he doing?" I asked, continuing to gather the pins and poking my fingertips repeatedly in my flustered state. "Not so hot. They think tonight might be the night." Ben picked up more pins. The night, he passes." We worked our way across the minefield of pins. We were silent, unable to talk casually in the face of his impending loss. We scooped up the last pins, snapped them into their plastic case, and stood in the middle of the entryway, a foot apart. When he glanced at me, the sorrow in his eyes squeezed my heart. I put a hand on his shoulder. I'm really sorry, Ben. Thanks. We stood mutely for a moment. I retrieved my hand. I need to put up these signs. Want to help? I would, but I gotta go. I just came to give you this. He reached inside his jacket, pulled out a card, and handed it to me. Thought you might need a little boost. On the front, he had drawn one of his cartoons. It was an underwater scene with a closed oyster shell surrounded by rangy seaweed plumes. Above the oyster it read, For Pearl. Open it, Ben urged. Inside was the same scene, except the shell was wide open. I sat in the middle of the oyster on a plush blanket with one baby on my lap, another peering over my shoulder from a backpack. Excuse me. And two more at my feet peeking out of a picnic basket. In the seaweed on either side of the shell, other babies peered in my direction. Every baby was happy. Some even appeared to be laughing. Underneath the scene was written, The Baby Catcher. I stared at the picture in amazement. He had captured everyone in perfect caricatures. Joseph, Daniel, Siobhan, Timothy, and me. Who are all of these other babies? I asked, pointing to the seaweed. He shrugged. Don't know for sure. The babies you have yet to catch. Impulsively, I stepped forward and threw both arms around him. It's perfect, Ben. I love it. Thank you so much. He stood stock still, with both arms locked down at his sides, pinned by my unexpected hug. I quickly drew back, fearing I had overstepped our friendship in my exuberance, but a glimpse of his eyes revealed an unmistakable spark of pleasure. He stuck his hands into his coat pockets. I'm glad you like it. A car honked outside. Ben's mom was still waiting. He waved at her through the glass doors and turned back to me. I know you'll do great tonight. He lunged forward, planted a kiss on my cheek, pivoted, and fled. I nearly dropped the box of pins again. My feet refused to move for several minutes. This was probably a blessing, since I may have wandered off into some unknown corner of the school, and teacher would have had to send out search and rescue to find me. But eventually my mind returned to my body from the la-la land of first kisses, and I was able to complete my assignment. I was grateful it wasn't a job that required a great deal of brain power. Sorry, guys. Jeez Louise. Ben Bradley kissed me. Over and over again, this phrase washed across my mind, eliciting fresh rounds of butterflies. These were not the nervous variety, however, but rather the slightly delirious ones, much more pleasant, but still a bit unsettling. As I pinned up the last sign, a new thought interrupted my delirium. Should I tell Mother? She might not approve. Then, with her usual perfect timing, Mother appeared at the cafeteria doorway. She walked briskly in my direction. Pearl, what have you been doing? Surely it hasn't taken you this long to put up 2 signs. It's nearly 7 o'clock. People are arriving. We're almost ready to start. In my haze, I hadn't even noticed the people walking past me in the hallway. If any of them had greeted me, I was oblivious to the fact. Sorry, I sputtered. I didn't realize the time. It's okay, dear, but we need to get back inside and take our seats. Teacher Anne has places reserved for us at the front table with the others, Mother said. What's that you're holding? Without realizing it, I was holding Ben's card with both hands pressed against my heart. Oh, this? It's just a card Ben made for me. Ben Bradley? When did you see him? Well, that's what took me so long. Ben asked his mom to bring him here for a minute so he could give me this. I gave her the card and waited for her reaction. She looked over the front and then opened it up. The baby catcher? A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. It was very thoughtful of him to make the effort to get it to you tonight. Did you thank him and his mother? Yes, of course I thanked him, I responded, hating the flush that rose in my cheeks, as I remembered my thank you hug. I didn't thank his mom. She stayed outside in the car, but I will when I get a chance. Mother handed back the card, placed her arm around my shoulder, and steered me into the cafeteria. Okay, make sure you do. Now let's go. While I'd been occupied with my task, the cafeteria had been transformed. Miniature pumpkins and yellow gourds and beds of brightly colored fall leaves filled the center of each table. Around the room, people stood chatting with friends and neighbors, their hands filled with coffee mugs and napkins laden with scrumptious morsels. Their coats were draped over the backs of chairs, sleeves stuffed like sausages with hats, gloves, and scarves. Some who had already staked their claims strolled the length of the room, stopping to examine the artwork at each table. I was surprised to see this sheer number of people who had arrived. Mr. Lamore and his art students entered the room in a chattering flurry and quickly filled up a table close to the front. Maybe it was just my imagination, but they all actually seemed excited to be there. The young mothers occupied the same table as the month before, passing around what looked to be a newborn with much oohing and awing. Mr. Brown stood at the far table and pulled out a chair for Miss Francine, right next to Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt. It was pretty much the same crowd that had been at the previous month's event, except for one notable difference. There were more men in attendance. In fact, one entire table in the middle of the room was populated by middle-aged men. Teacher Anne tapped on the microphone. Folks, why don't you freshen up your coffee, grab another cookie or bar, and make your way to your seats. The evening's event will be starting in just a few minutes. As Mother and I headed for the front, I heard, Pearl, wait up! I turned around. Mel and Elle rushed to me. Elle looked exactly the same as she had a few hours ago, except less crazed. Mel was in her black and gold cheerleading uniform. They fell on me in an enthusiastic group hug. I can't believe it, Mel raved. If I weren't already here, I'd be so upset that I wasn't here. Elle and I looked at each other and laughed. I'll meet you at the table, Pearl. Don't take too long, Mother said with a chuckle before leaving out our little circle. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. We have arrived as authorized reinforcements, Elle announced, which is akin to being a cheerleader, she interrupted for Mel. I know that, Mel scoffed. Elle picked me up straight from the wrestling meet. Haven't eaten dinner. Don't even know what this is all about, but Elle said it was a friendship emergency. So here we are. Thanks, guys. Tears pricked my eyes. I don't think there's a room for you at my table, though. That's okay. I don't want to sit at front anyways. We'll find a spot, Mel said, turning toward the back. Hey, are those brownies back there? I'm going to grab about 5 of them. She ran off. Elle remained. No matter what, Pearl. Remember? She said. I nodded. She followed Mel. I turned and headed to find Mother, but a commotion in the doorway grabbed my attention. Coach Spencer held a struggling Reggie Dumfrey by the scruff of his shirt collar and was dragging him in my direction like a disobedient puppy. Miss Wells was right behind him. Found this rascal skulking in the hallway, Coach Spencer said. But don't you worry, he's going to spend the evening next to me, aren't you, buddy? Reggie didn't answer. What's that, Reg? Cat got your tongue? Coach tightened his grip. Yes, sir, Reggie muttered. That's what I thought. Now, let's find us a nice, comfortable spot. Coach steered Reggie past me and winked as he did. Go get him, Pearl. Miss Wells put a hand on each of my shoulders and peered into my eyes. Don't you worry about a thing. This is your night. You can do this. You were born for this. She gave my shoulders a quick squeeze and ran off to catch up to Coach. First Ben, then Mel and Elle, then Coach and Reggie and Miss Wells. It was an emotional roller coaster, and I wasn't sure what came next, an upward tick or a downward freefall. I murmured to myself as I headed toward the front, I can do this. I was born for this. Mother sat at a table near Fritz, who was dressed in a white button-up shirt and a silver and red striped tie. He was hunched over, staring at something in his lap. Hey, Fritz, I greeted him as I sat down next to him. He didn't look up. His eyes were glued to a stack of 3x5 cards in his hands, studying them intently. Mother picked up the pitcher on the table and poured water into some plastic cups. Want some water? I offered. I know I do. Fritz looked up and blinked, as if trying to refocus on the here and now. He reached for the cup I pushed in his direction and drank the whole thing down in one gulp. Thank you. Mind if I get a refill? He asked, setting the cup where Mother could reach it. Guess I was thirsty, he remarked, before taking another long swig from the refilled cup. It's best to have your vocal cords nice and moist before speaking, Mother reassured. I wouldn't know nothing about it, Fritz said, seeing as I generally avoid talking in front of folks like the plague. Now I remember why. It's silly. I've known most of these folks for years, and they're all the nicest sort you'd ever want to meet. It's not like they're taking me out to a firing squad, but it sure do feel like it. I placed my hand on Fritz's forearm, careful not to wrinkle his shirt that was ironed to a starched crispness. Fritz, why don't you and I make a deal? I said, trying to conjure up Miss Wells's encouraging tone. When you're up there behind the podium, you can pretend you're talking just to me. And when I'm up there, I'll pretend I'm talking just to you. Then, if anyone else happens to hear our conversation, well, good for them. But if not, at least you and I will get to know each other better. He reached out and laid his hand over mine. I reckon if you can do that, so can I. He turned to Mother and said, You have a real special young lady here. Thank you, Fritz. She even surprises me from time to time. Mrs. Grant, Mrs. Wilson, and their husbands arrived at the table, chit-chatting excitedly. They arranged their chairs so they would all be facing forward. You've decided to say something? Mother whispered in my ear amid the hubbub. What changed your mind? Some good friends, I whispered back, and something I remember Gregory saying. He told me I would need to be strong and courageous. I guess when you're real scared is the time when that implies most. She nodded and pressed my hand. I'll be praying. I'm counting on it. Okay. My throat's kind of feeling it today, so I might just read one more chapter. And unfortunately, I don't have water because my water jug that I keep at my house is empty. And I haven't had time to go fill it up yet. So, I need to do that today. Because I don't have any water. And I don't want to drink the tap water. Okay, here we go. Chapter 4. One Accord. Teacher Anne strode to the front of the cafeteria and stood behind the wooden podium. Okay, everyone, it's time to get the evening rolling. People converged on their seats. Shuffling, scuffling, and bumping of chairs underscored a flurry of last-minute conversations. Over the hubbub, she continued. I would like to welcome everyone to the second Art Appreciation Night of the year. A smattering of applause, as well as a few discreet shushes, assisted Teacher in her attempt to settle the crowd. Tonight, we have the pleasure of honoring some of our local artists. Some have been part of our art community for many years, and some are just joining our ranks. She smiled directly at me. My mouth dried up like a sponge. I grabbed a cup of water and took a gulp. You will see some amazing artwork and hear some wonderful stories. I know because I have had the privilege of working with each of one of these artists. They all participated in a community-sponsored art class I taught this past summer. The middle display table, she said, pointing in that direction, holds the pieces we worked on in that class. The other tables are filled with each individual artist's work. This is quite a variety, a veritable feast for the eyes and refreshment for the soul. You will have more opportunity to view the art once we have heard from the artists. So without further ado, I would like to bring to the podium a dynamic duo in both art and life, Dolores Wilson and Helen Grant. The audience applauded as the two women paraded to the front. Mrs. Wilson, clad in a navy blazer and matching slacks with a yellow scarf at her neck, moved to take the microphone first. Dressed in a tan corduroy jumper over a turtleneck and printed with fall leaves, Mrs. Grant took up a post behind her friend. Mrs. Wilson grabbed her by the hand. Helen, you can't hide back there, she said, pulling her forward. Oh, now, I'm okay back here, Mrs. Grant protested, pushing away her hand. Come on, Mrs. Wilson persisted. We talked about this, one for all and all for one. You just go, Mrs. Grant said, not budging from her spot. Nope, Mrs. Wilson crossed her arms and waited. Not starting till you get on up here next to me. Goodness sake, such a fuss, Mrs. Grant whispered as she stepped forward. Her cheeks were flushed. Their little squabble was quiet and probably only audible to those of us in the front row. Mrs. Wilson stretched her long, athletic arm around her comrade's plump shoulder, maneuvered her into a spot right next to her, and gave a squeeze. There, stay, she instructed. Mr. Grant leaned forward across the table and whispered, You look just lovely, honey bun. The pink in his wife's cheeks blossomed into full-blown red. He sat back, his arms resting on the top of his generous belly, his face aglow, pleased as punch. Mrs. Wilson adjusted the microphone and began. Is this all right? Can everyone hear me? A few claps and verbal affirmatives arose from the audience. Very good. Well, let's get started. As most of you know, I am Dolores Wilson, and this dear lady standing there... Okay. Okay. As most of you know, I am Dolores Wilson, and this dear lady standing right next to me, she said, smiling at Mrs. Grant, is my friend Helen Grant. As you will see at the display tables, my main focus in art is watercolors, and Helen's is charcoal sketches. We hope you will enjoy viewing them as much as we have enjoyed making them. Teacher Anne has asked us to tell you a little about how we got started in art, and why we believe art is so important. We thought the best way to do that was to tell you the story of our friendship. Mrs. Wilson sashayed to her right as Mrs. Grant moved over and pulled the microphone down to her level. She placed her folded hands on the podium. First, let me say how nice it is to see you all here tonight, she said. A little louder, honey bun, Mr. Grant coached. Mrs. Grant cleared her throat and eyed her husband before starting afresh. Thank you for coming out and showing your support for the arts in our community, she enunciated clearly and strongly. And let me say an additional thank you to our dear teacher Anne for being the spearhead behind this event. Anne, your passion for the arts is a true blessing to so many of us. Mrs. Wilson cried out, Hear, hear, and led a round of applause for teacher Anne, who accepted the thanks by placing a hand over her heart. Mrs. Grant, tucking her neatly bobbed silver hair behind one ear, leaned back into the microphone. So, let me start at the beginning then. Dolores and I were both young brides when we came to this community more years ago than either of us care to admit. 37 to be exact, Mr. Grant piped up loud enough for all to hear. Harvey, Mrs. Grant exclaimed, if you're not going to behave yourself, I will have my teacher escort you to the back. He raised his hands in surrender and chuckled. Many joined him. You can dress him up, but you can't take him out, Mrs. Grant said. So, as I said, Dolores and I were real young when we arrived in this town. Our husbands had both been hired to work at the paper mill. At the time we moved here, I had one baby in arms and another on the way. Dolores was pregnant with her first. We met at summer barbecue sponsored by the mill. Our husbands already knew each other from work, but Dolores and I knew no one. We had our families and our homes, which we loved, but we needed something more, don't you know? Dolores and I hit it off the very first day we met. We found that we had many things in common. I know that by looking at us, you wouldn't necessarily think we were a match set. The audience laughed at her good-natured humor. Their response seemed to bolster her courage, and she settled into her role. We soon found out we had a similar perspectives on life, similar dreams, and a similar sense of humor. In short, we were kindred spirits. One thing we discovered early on was we both had an artistic bent, but neither one of us had any formal training. So we went to the public library and began to check out books on learning to draw and paint and such. Of course, our little library didn't have too many books like that, so we got to know the librarian really well. Are you here tonight, Mary Lou? She scanned the crowd. Back here, Helen. She's right here, a voice cried out. I craned around to see. Others did the same. I couldn't see who Mrs. Grant was talking about. Mel and Elle caught my eye from their spot in the back. They sat right beside Dr. Brown and Miss Francine. I silently prayed that Mel would behave herself. As if on cue, she scrunched up her face and stuck her thumbs in her ears, wiggling her fingers wildly. Miss Francine averted her gaze. Elle waved apologetically. I waved back. Hey, friend, Mrs. Grant carried on, pointing to where Mary Lou was seated. I caught a glimpse. I recognized the gray-haired woman with the thick glasses and ample bosom. She went to our church, but I didn't know she used to be the town librarian, and I had no idea her name was Mary Lou. I always thought she was probably named Pearl. Thanks for coming, Mrs. Grant continued. Mary Lou retired a few years back. She's a little shy in public, but put her on the trail of a book and she's a real tiger. She helped us order books from libraries all over the state and even the country. I don't think Dolores and I would be standing here tonight without the assistance she has given us over the years. Amen to that, Mrs. Wilson chimed in. So, with our books in hand, Mrs. Grant resumed her story, Dolores and I scheduled one night per month for our husbands to be in charge of the home front, which eventually consisted of 4 kids per household, and we had art night. Sort of like tonight, except we got our hands dirty trying all different kinds of arts and crafts. We didn't have much extra money, so we pooled our resources and got creative at making our own supplies. As the year went by, we started to get pretty good at some things. We discovered we could sell our work at arts and crafts fairs. This opened a whole new world to us. Plus, we began to see a return on our investment. Of course, this is about the time our husbands started to get excited about everything, when they saw us making money instead of just spending it. The audience murmured appreciatively as the 2 husbands reached across the table and high-fived each other. Mrs. Wilson swapped places with her friend and pulled the mic upward with a creak. As you've heard, she said, art became an important connecting point and source of great enjoyment for the 2 of us. But as you know, life isn't always smooth sailing. Sometimes it's downright hard, and our 2 families are no different than yours. We've experienced our fair share of upheavals and difficulties. It was during these times that art became something more to us than just a fun hobby or side business. It's become a way for us to express things we had no words for. When our second son went off to Vietnam and never returned, her chin dropped. Mrs. Grant placed a hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Wilson blew out a breath, squared her shoulders, looked up, and continued. I couldn't see the beauty in anything anymore. Stopped painting for 3 years. But during those years, my friend here, she turned and spoke directly to Mrs. Grant, she created a hand-drawn card for me every week. Every week for 3 years, I'd come home and find one of her charcoal sketches on my kitchen table, and my spirits would lift. Mrs. Grant's cheeks blossomed anew. Mrs. Wilson redirected her comments to the crowd. The beauty she captured helped ease my sorrows in ways I cannot explain, even to this day. I'd find myself going back to her sketches over and over again for encouragement and comfort. I still have every one of those cards stuck safely in a special box. You do? Mrs. Grant blurted. Yes, I do. Mrs. Wilson nodded to her friend. They are some of my most treasured possessions. Well, don't that beat all, Mrs. Grant muttered. Mrs. Wilson smiled at her before turning her attention back to her audience. Then one day, at the end of those 3 years, I heard Helen's youngest was going through a rough patch, and I knew what I needed to do. I dusted off my paintbrushes and made a card. The look on Helen's face when I handed it to her is one I'll never forget. Oh. And I knew that her cards had helped carry me through some rough waters, and now it was my turn to carry her. Somewhere around that time, we started to think about what our little cards might do for others. We realized our art was more than a talent. It was a gift from God, and it needed to be shared. Her words hit me right between my eyes. Their story differed from mine, but their conclusion about art was the same. I leaned forward, eager to find out what came next. So, Mrs. Wilson resumed, we connected with our different churches. Yes, ALC Lutherans and Missouri Synod Lutherans can be friends. And we asked if we could offer our artwork in the form of handmade cards for anyone who were grieving or ill in our community. Our pastors took us up on our offer. We have been making cards together for more than a decade now. Maybe some of you have received them. It has been our hope and prayer that in some small way that they may have brought you comfort or joy or hope or whatever you needed at the time. I still have mine framed and hanging next to my bed, a clear, strong female voice from the right side of the room suddenly interrupted. Mrs. Wilson turned to Mrs. Grant. They smiled. Mine is tucked into my Bible, came another comment from a man at the table next to me. Got mine under the glass in the coffee table, a woman shouted from clear in the back. Stuck mine on the fridge with magnets. Made mine into a laminated placemat. Sent mine off to a friend in the hospital. Saved mine for 5 years till my dog ate it, added one more. Might have to get sick again so I can get another. The room erupted into laughter. Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Grant grasped each other's hands and exchanged a tearful glance. Then Mrs. Wilson leaned back into the microphone. No, please don't get sick. We'll make you one for being healthy. Applause broke out. Teacher Ann stood up and gave the ladies each a hug. They moved back to their places. I stared at the card from Ben that sat in my lap. I knew exactly what they were talking about. Okay, one more chapter. One more. Because I feel like she's gonna talk now, and I think it's gonna be great. Okay, Chapter 5, Beauty from Ashes. Next on the agenda, Teacher Ann announced, we have a rare treat. We get to hear from Mr. Fritz Schaefer. Please warmly welcome him to the podium. The audience applauded as Fritz rose and scuffled forward. I heard a quiet, "Attaboy, Fritz," from a man behind me, and a "way to go, buddy," from another on my right. You've got this, boss, said Mr. Wilson. We're rooting for ya, added Mr. Grant. Yep, sure are, spouted another. Bring it on. Let's go now. The prattle made it sound as if someone were stepping to the plate to take their turn at bat rather than taking the microphone to speak. I realized the extra men in attendance had come for this, to support Fritz. It was just what he needed. That's so cute! Oh my gosh! He shook his head and smiled ever so slightly as he tapped his 3x5 cards on the podium, adjusting the microphone, and cleared his throat. That's so cute. I sure do appreciate the support, folks, he said. Most of you know I'd rather shovel Main Street by hand than stand up here and do this. In fact, I'd rather do most anything than this, except maybe run for office. Please don't ever ask me to do that. A male voice from the middle table chimed up. I'd vote for you, Fritz. Laughter helped ease the tension of seeing a man so obviously out of his element. Well, Fritz said, shaking his head, that would be a waste of a vote, since I'd flee across county lines rather than hold public office. Again, polite laughter rippled through the room. Fritz tugged on the knot of his tie and peered down at his notes for a moment. When he looked back up, he gazed straight at me. If the rest of you don't mind, he said, I'm going to focus my attention on this pretty young lady at the front table. She and I agreed that we would pretend we were the only ones in the room. If you all overhear our conversation, well, so be it. But this is what I'm going to need to do. Besides, I reckon most of what I got to say pertains to her anyways. I didn't quite know what he meant, but I gave him the most encouraging smile I could work up. Well, now, let's see. He glanced down at his notes. I guess as far as art goes, my favorite things to do are carvin' and sculptin'. He set down the cards, looked out above the heads of the people, and tapped his fingers on the podium as if pondering his next move. When he turned his eyes to me, it seemed he had made a decision. He stuffed one hand into his back pocket and launched out. So when I was a young boy, my opa, my grandma, lived with us. He taught me how to whittle. On long, cold winter nights, we'd sit by the wood stove, and he'd show me how to pick a piece of wood to carve. He said every piece had something inside of it, waiting to get out. It was the whittler's job to discover what that was and bring it to life. Sometimes the wood wanted to be something useful, like a letter opener or a ladle, but other times the wood held things like critters or trees or people. For a long time, I didn't know what Opa was talking about. I just picked up a piece of wood and started hacking away with my knife, making whatever I wanted to make. Opa would let me. He'd show me new ways to cut and scrape and mark the wood and so forth, but no matter how much he taught me, my pieces never came close to being as beautiful as his. It was working. Fritz was talking as easily as if it was just him and me sitting in the living room. Not that he'd ever been in my house, or ever really talked to me for that matter, but I guess he'd been saving up his words. It seemed he had something he wanted to tell me. Then, when I was 10 years old, Fritz continued his story, Opa got real sick. Pneumonia in both lungs. Took to his bed for days. Too weak to even hold his knife. So in the evenings, I'd sit by his bed just to keep him company and carve sort of aimless-like. Then one night, when he was starting to feel a little better, he said, "And Coulson, give me that I'm going to try to do this. Enkelson. Enkelson? I'm guessing that means like grandson or something. Enkelson, give me that piece of wood and come here next to me." I feel like that was pretty good. That's crazy. I climbed up on the little bed next to him and handed him the chunk of pine I chose that night. He said, "Put your hands next to mine on this wood and tell me what you feel." We'd done this exercise before, and I never felt nothing from the wood except wood, so I wasn't too eager to try again. But because he was sick and I knew better than to argue, I reached over and put my hands next to his. It wasn't a big piece of wood, about 6 inches long and 4 inches thick. Don't talk. Oh, sorry, this is going back to him. Don't talk. Let's wait and feel and listen, he told me. Then he took my hands in his and slowly moved them over the wood surface, exploring every nook and cranny, and all of a sudden, something like electricity shot through my hands. Fritz threw both hands up to demonstrate his surprise, and I dropped that piece of wood right onto Opa's chest. He started laughing, which caused the coffin jag so fierce I jumped off the bed to get him a glass of water. Fitz was on a roll. I was enthralled. When he caught his breath, there was a twinkle in his eye as he whispered, "What did you feel? What did the wood tell you?" I thought for a moment about the current that had shot through my hands. "Opa," I said, "I think this wood wants to be ein Burngut," a bear cub. I definitely butchered that, but I tried. "Oh," he clapped his hands in delight, Fritz said, chuckling at the memory. Opa said, That's it, mein Barken. That's what the wood wants. Go and get started. Be careful to listen as you go." And by golly, I whittled out the best-looking bear cub ever. It was like the wood cooperated with my cuts and scrapes because that's what it wanted all along. Fritz's words ground to a halt. Discomfort began to creep in, trying to push out the ease he had acquired and reliving the moments with his Opa. I didn't want him to give in to the fear. I wanted to know the rest of the story. "What happened next, Fritz? Did you keep on carving?" I asked. My voice seemed to jar him back into the present. "Yeah, boss, don't drop us now," Mr. Grant urged. "Got us hanging on tenterhooks," Mr. Wilson concurred. Fritz managed a nod in their direction, then looked back at me. "Well, I sure did keep on carving," he said. For years, actually. All the way through my time working out at the mill. Had a pretty good little side business set up selling my carvings, too. Then God rest her soul, God rest her soul, was my best marketer and saleswoman. We'd set up booths out at the county fair each summer, even went down to the state fair a few years. She talked to folks and seemed to know just what they were looking for. She said I heard what the wood had inside of it, and she heard what people had inside of them. She had a real way with folks. Fritz's voice trailed off again. He hung his head as he shuffled his 3x5 cards. I grabbed a cup of water from the table and stepped to the podium. Here you go, Fritz. You're doing great. Memories played across his eyes as he took the cup and sipped. Thank you, Pearl. Sorta got lost there for a minute. So then, let's see here. Fritz set down the cup and flipped over a few of his cards as I slipped back to my seat. I know I've already said more than you expected, but I hope you'll hang in there a bit longer, he said, with a brief glance out at the crowd. You're doing great, boss, Mr. Wilson piped up. Take all the time you need, added Mr. Grant. Keep her coming. We're with you. His fan base kept up their chatter. Well, he said, nodding his head, as most of these folks here know, the missus and I never had no children. So the boys at the mill sort of became our kids. I was foreman over the mechanics and truck crews for 25 years. That's long enough to see boys turn to men, get married, have kids, and even grandkids. I took pride in treating those boys like family, always wanting the best for them and always expecting the best from them. When the missus got the cancer and died so sudden, those boys kept me going, sort of took me under their wings and watched over me. He paused, took a sip of water, and resumed. During that whole time, I kept whittling and carving, but after her passing, I didn't sell anything no more. Just did it for my own comfort mostly, and to give away as thank you gifts when some of you kind folks invited me to your family gatherings and such. He glanced up and acknowledged the crowd. I never really tried any sculpting, never felt the need to. I was content to be a woodcarver all my days, but all that changed after the accident, the one where we lost your daddy, Pearl. Our eyes locked. He took a deep breath and blew it out, maintaining eye contact. A steely determination rose up in him. Suddenly, I wasn't so sure I wanted to hear what was next. Oh my gosh, I'm already crying. Okay. I was the foreman that night, he confessed, and I was the one who made the call that it was safe enough for him to drive. Never been more wrong in my entire life. I've regretted that decision every second since. He dropped his glance from me and then turned his gaze to Teacher. Then, of course, we lost Rick. And, well, you can imagine the weight of responsibility I felt for him, too. None of it ever should have happened, but it did. Ooh. The room was silent except for the pounding of my heart in my ears. I stared at Fritz in disbelief. His chin hung down, leaving me a view of his shiny bald head and the halo of white fuzz around it. A big tear slid down my cheek. Mother reached over and put her hand between my shoulder blades and rubbed softly. I turned to her and asked silently, Did you know? She smiled tersely and nodded. She knew. She'd always known. Fritz cleared his throat and I turned my attention back to him. Pearl, I'm real sorry. I've talked to your mama and Teacher Ann over the years about all this. They've always been real gracious and forgiving. More than I deserve. But I never had the nerve to tell you. Of course, I hardly knew you till we took the art class together this summer. There were times I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't quite find the words. So please forgive me for doing this so publicly. I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me for all you've lost because of me. I was speechless. He paused. Quiet sniffles and soft wiping of cheeks surrounded me. I guess the reason I'm doing this tonight at this gathering, he continued, is because that time in my life not only changed me, but changed my art forever. After we lost those boys, I couldn't keep working at the mill. Just didn't have it in me no more. So I took an early retirement and went home, not sure what I was going to do. I tried carving again, which gave me some comfort after the missus passed, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't carve a thing. I was real low one day, sitting in my wood shop thinking about your daddy and Rick and reliving every moment, when I heard a voice say, Pick up that rock. It was so clear I thought someone had snuck into the shop. But when I looked around, no one was there. I figured since there wasn't a body around, it must have been the Almighty. I had never heard his voice before, and I wasn't sure why he might want to have anything to do with me. But I thought I'd better do what he said. So I picked up a chunk of granite I had sitting on my workbench. I'd used it as a paperweight for years, but never really paid no attention to it. Then the voice said, Hold it. Feel and listen. It was like hearing from Opa all over again. I didn't resist, just took my time holding that rock. Didn't have nothing else to do. I held it and felt it and listened for hours until I knew. There was a rose inside that chunk of granite. The voice said, That's it. Make something beautiful out of something hard. Oh my gosh. Okay, wait, sorry. I'm gonna... Sorry, I'm highlighting that section because I like that. Took me a day or so to round up the proper tools, and when I did, I had no notion of how to begin. So I asked the one who had told me to pick up the rock, "How do I do this, Lord?" And I tell you, as sure as I'm standing here tonight, I felt someone's hands cover my own and teach me how to chisel something delicate and beautiful out of a hard chunk of granite. As we worked together, he spoke to me about things, hard things. He showed me how to find treasure in darkness. He told me about riches stored in secret places. Sculpting for me is God's healing balm for my broken heart. It's my connecting point to the Almighty. It's where He still speaks to me in every piece I do. I think the reason people seem to enjoy my work is because when they look at it, they don't see my skill so much as they see the handiwork of God. Oh my gosh. That's beautiful. He stopped, reached down inside the podium, and pulled out a chunk of granite. He stepped up. Stop it. Stop it. Oh my gosh, stop it. He stepped over to me and set it on the table with great care. "So, Pearl, tonight I'd like to present this piece to you," he said. People all around me strained forward to hear what he was saying. He didn't seem to care if they could hear him or not. His words were for me. It sat on my workbench for 9 years as a reminder to me of God's faithfulness and goodness, even in the hard times. I want you to have it. It was the rose. So lifelike, I half expected to catch a whiff of its perfume wafting up from the rocky petals. I stared at it, trying to absorb its beauty, trying to comprehend everything I'd just heard. Somehow, this art appreciation night had turned into a thin place. I closed my eyes for a moment, and a warm, weighty presence sent tingles up and down my spine. When I opened my eyes, Fritz stood directly in front of me, agony and tenderness carved into the crags of his face. I don't remember deciding to jump up and fling my arms around his waist, but suddenly, that's what I was doing. "I forgive you," I said for his ears only. He wrapped his arms around me and squeezed. We clung to each other mutely. Then one person behind me began to clap, then another and another, until everyone was applauding and people were standing. No chatter or prattle from the peanut gallery, just hands clapping. Fritz bent down to kiss the top of my head. "You are a treasure, Pearl. A true treasure," I heard him say before we separated and took our seats. In my haste to jump up, the card from Ben had fallen to the floor. Fritz saw it and bent to pick it up. He handed it to me. "Appears as though you've got a fan," he said. I nodded. "Truth is, you've got quite a few," he added, "and I'm guessing you're about to get a bunch more." Oh my gosh, that was so cute. Stop it. Oh. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, now that chapter was so cute, I want to read one more because I know now it's going to be... Oh, there's an interlude. Okay. We're doing the interlude at least, and then we'll probably read one more. Okay. Interlude, the father. To call it a ladder is a vast understatement. Maybe at the bottom of wherever the rungs lead it looks like a ladder, but up where it begins it's more like the entrance to a massive stairway. I calculate that from where our little group stands at one side of the stairs to the other side must be at least a mile, and it is a busy place. The bustle of activity is beyond anything I've experienced anywhere, ever. Heavenly hosts fly in and out, up and down, over and around with breathtaking speed. Vehicles and creatures and clouds and all manner of transport whisk humans to and fro from the translucent Vehicles and creatures and clouds and all manner of transport whisk humans to and from the translucent platform at the stair's edge in a constant blur of arrivals and departures. At the center of it all, seated on a glorious sapphire throne that seems to hover on a shining cloud above it all, sits the I Am. "He's here," William whispers in awe. Pua nods. "The Father loves it here at Bethel." I inhaled deeply and tried to resist the urge to fall flat on my face. What do we do now? The question isn't even off my lips when 3 mighty escorts appear before us. Joseph, awake and alert, squeals and reaches out his arms towards the golden one. "He's excited to see you again, Gregory," Maggie says, handing him to the stately figure. "And I him." Gregory scoops the little fellow up and tosses him into the air, which elicits a wellspring of giggles from Joseph. Then he hugs Joseph close to his chest and kisses the top of his head. "He has grown so strong," he says, as he sets him back into his auntie's arms. "Of course he has," says Pua. "He's in expert hands." She pats Maggie's arm before turning to the 2 other escorts, one cloaked in brilliant blue and the other in deep purple. "I'm certainly delighted to see you 2, Pua remarks. They smile at her, but remain silent. The one in blue stretches out his hand. Pua pulls the scroll from her waistband and hands it to him. He reads it silently, then says, "Come." My heart pounds. William lets Daniel slide back down his back. He looks up at us with glowing eyes the size of planets. "Can Oliver come too?" Daniel asks, pulling the bluebird from his pocket. "You brought him along?" I say. He said he wanted to come, Daniel replies matter-of-factly. Bring your feathered friend along, says Pua as she kneels in front of him. The I Am is the father of all creatures, great and small. Daniel wraps his free arm around his neck, and Pua stands with him, riding easily on her hip. Oliver perches on Daniel's shoulder. Ilsa holds Maggie's hand and steps in line behind Pua and our 3 escorts. William and I follow. We maneuver at an incredible rate of speed toward the epicenter of all the movement, the Sapphire Throne. It is impossible to comprehend how, but the Father is instructing and dispatching every creature, human or heavenly, at the precipice of the great ladder with a mind-bending alacrity. Before I know it, our group kneels in tandem at his feet. I like the word alacrity. It's a good word. Ah, my precious ones, rise, he says, with unfathomable kindness. We stand. It is a joy to have you here again, Pua, and with a group of novices, he says with a smile. Pua laughs. Yes, Abba, a fresh group of diligent seekers, those you love to reward. Yes, my daughter, thank you for delivering them here. He proceeds to cradle each one of our faces in his hands and greet us by name. Such love envelops us that I am certain where I end and he begins. Uncertain where I end and he begins. It is as if he has drawn us into his very heart. Ilsa, John, and William, I have chosen the youngest and the least from among your people to bring change. She will bind up the broken-hearted and set captives free. Go to her with a fresh wind of hope, a deep river of joy, and a stout measure of boldness. My love makes a way where there seems to be no way. He turns to Maggie and Joseph. You, too, will deliver a great measure of courage and love as you go, ready to take a journey down the ladder? Joseph claps his hands and kicks his little feet. It would appear that Joseph certainly is, Maggie says, and I am honored to take him. Abba, Daniel pipes up. Can I go down the big ladder, too? The father bends forward, picks him out of Pua's arms, and sets him on his lap. That's precisely what I had in mind, young man, he says. But who is this sitting on your shoulder? That's Will's friend, Oliver. Can he come too? He's really nice, Daniel pleads. I think that's a good idea. With one finger, he strokes Oliver's feathers. Go as a carrier of light. Oliver flaps his wings, breaks into song, and flies back to Will. Daniel squeals in delight and wraps his arm around the father's neck. Thank you, Abba. The father holds him close, kisses his cheeks, then places him back in Pua's outstretched arms. Now, dear ones, I send you. He turns to the golden escort. Gregory, you know the way. Lead on and go in my peace. He breathes upon us, and we are swept over the edge on a carpet of love. Chapter 26. Be true. With the room still echoing with applause, teacher went to the front and motioned for everyone to take their seats. In a quiet reverence I had only ever experienced in church, we all settled into our places. Teacher stepped to the podium. Well, this has turned into quite the evening, she said. I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you, Fritz, for sharing your story so candidly. Every time I hear the way God has given beauty for ashes, I feel the healing balm you described being applied to my heart as well. So thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone to be a speaker tonight. Fritz sat still with his hands folded in his lap and nodded once. When teacher turned to her gaze on me, I realized I had been so busy pulling for Fritz that I'd forgotten what came next. Until that moment, a wave of nausea flooded me. Mother leaned over. Pearl, you can do this. Be strong and courageous, remember? Teacher must have sensed my vacillation. We have one more exhibitor tonight, she said, as I am sure you have all noticed. She was the youngest participant in the summer art class by quite a long shot. At first it was not comfortable for her to hang out with us old folks, but Pearl persevered because she truly desired to grow as an artist. As her instructor, I will tell you that it was a delight to see her skills develop. She was an eager student and a reliable classmate. Even when she faced some health challenges and wound up in the hospital for a few days, she came back to class ready to go. But beyond all that, she is a gifted artist. I've asked her to share a little so you can hear what's behind those remarkable sketches displayed on the round table in the back. Pearl, will you come and share? I sat stock still, certain that someone had vacuumed the breath out of me. I heard what she said, but couldn't respond, couldn't move a muscle. Mother tapped my elbow. Sweetheart, are you okay? Then, just as the silence grew unbearable, a gentle breeze blew across the room, starting from the back corner. It rustled napkins and ruffled hairdos as it swept toward me. Low murmurs followed in its wake. What's that? Someone open a window? What's going on? When the breeze reached me, it flipped open Ben's card that lay on the table in front of me. I stared at the picture of me in the oyster shell, surrounded by happy babies. The breath returned to my lungs. My heart found its rhythm. I don't know how I got to the podium, but suddenly there I was, seated on the high wooden stool Teacher Anne had set in place for me. I eyeballed the people. They eyeballed me. A hush fell. I contemplated escape. Suddenly, Mel popped up and waved both arms overhead in true cheerleader fashion. Go, Pearl, go! She yelled before Elle yanked her back down with a glare. Miss Francine covered her mouth with a gloved hand. Mrs. Schmidt shook her head. People about-faced to figure out the source of the outburst. It was a relief to have all eyes shifted elsewhere. They murmured and pointed at my friends. I smiled and shook my head. Mel blew me a kiss. Elle buried her head in her hands. And that's when I saw them. Just over Mel's head, near my display table, David and Miranda stood against the back wall, hand in hand. their coats still on, unbuttoned and hanging open. Right beside them stood Susan and Scott. Oh, cute! To be honest, it took me a second to realize that David was her brother. Susan lifted a hand and waved. David offered a terse smile. When did they arrive? Why didn't they tell us they were coming? Did they hear Fritz talk? I looked at Mother. Her head was turned to the back wall, her spine rigid. She'd seen them. Emotions of every variety leapt up and collided in my heart. Stars flashed across my vision. I struggled to regain a semblance of composure, but the stars kept flashing. Then, to my surprise, a golden haze enveloped the stars and swept them off into a corner beyond the refreshment table. I stared in amazement. The haze grew brighter and brighter. Then on either side of it, a purple haze and a blue haze appeared. I looked at Mother. She had returned her gaze to the front. Do you see them? I mouthed at her. Yes, I see them, she whispered. I didn't know they were coming. She had seen my siblings, but she hadn't seen what I had seen. Teacher cleared her throat. Pearl, are you going to be okay? She asked from her seat. Suddenly a great and awesome peace flooded my heart like a river. Yeah, I replied. I think I am. I glanced down at Fritz. He gave me a thumbs up. I looked over the crowd at my siblings. David, too, offered a thumbs up. I breathed in deeply. I opened my mouth. Amazingly, it was full of words. Well, as you all know by now, my name is Pearl. My favorite thing to do is draw, and my favorite thing to draw is babies. I guess you could call me a baby catcher. I come from a long line of baby catchers, but I never wanted to be one, and I never wanted to be named Pearl. Funny how God can turn that all around. And so my story rolled out. A cocoon of love enveloped me and gave me the courage to look beyond Fritz to the entire crowd. The people laughed, cried, oohed, and awed in all the right places. I felt their encouragement. I didn't question why some parts of the story were left out and others included. I went where I was led, and as I did, shivers ran through my body and electrical currents. It was the same feeling I got when I sketched my babies. I had come to think of it as feeling the king's good pleasure. I knew he was pleased with my art, but I never expected to feel his good pleasure in my words. It felt so exhilarating. I wanted to throw my head back and laugh, but I contained myself. Evidently, Gregory and his companions were under no such restraint, for in a twinkling the room lit up with flashes of gold, purple, and blue. The lights danced across the ceiling and bounced from wall to wall. They spun in pirouettes on the tabletops, humming in glorious harmonies. It was like the Aurora Borealis, and the Concordia Choir had burst into the room. People looked up and around in startled confusion. I could hardly believe it, but it was true. I was no longer the only one with eyes to see or ears to hear. The entire crowd had become aware of the heavenly invasion. Where are those lights coming from? Who's that singing? We got a choir somewhere in here? Is this one of those laser shows? Oh my, isn't this pretty? Some scanned the ceiling and walls, seeking the source of the lights and music. Others sat dumbstruck in wonder. Still others reached for the lights, like kids trying to catch lighting bugs. At one point, the blue and purple lights merged together and stopped right above Mother's head. She looked up in utter amazement. They began to spin faster and faster, shooting out dazzling colors like a disco ball. Mother's hair stood up on end, all the careful curls undone. My attention shifted from Mother's stunned but shining face when the three lights converged and darted to the front. The gold, blue, and purple hazes stopped right in front of me at the podium. They started to twirl. I was glad my hair was snugged tightly into a braid as the wind began to swirl around me. Bursts of every color shot out from the spinning cloud. Fresh exclamations arose from the audience as if they were admiring fireworks on the 4th of July. By golly, that's a beauty! Ah, did you see that? Oh, my stars and garters! Holy mackerel! I'd seen this sort of display before. Gregory! The word shot out of my mouth and through the speakers. Did she say Gregory? Asked Mrs. Wilson. I believe she did, replied Mrs. Grant through the fingers covering her gaping mouth. Angels in our midst, said Fritz, his face awash in wonder like a kid in a candy shop with money in his pocket, and the word bounced from table to table. Angels! They're angels! I hear they're angels! Did you say angels? Gregory continued dancing like he had at Joseph's reception, and his angelic friends did too. The wordless melody they sang together as they spun was so irresistibly joyful that I threw any sense of propriety to the wind and leapt off the stool. Jumping and spinning with all my heart and strength, I flung my head back and laughed. It was as if I'd set a match to an oil slick. In a flash, people all over the room leapt to their feet and started to dance. Those who were able spun around and jumped in the air. Some who hadn't danced in decades tapped their toes, clapped their hands, and tried a few awkward arm motions. The Mom's Night Out ladies organized a line dance. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson gathered up Mr. and Mrs. Grant and did an impromptu square dance. Teacher pulled Fritz to his feet, and they began to polka, slowly at first, but soon they oompah'd across the room like professionals. Much to my further astonishment, Dr. Brown and Miss Francine waltzed right past me, but carefully coiffed Bubble undone and flowing around her shoulders. Following in their wake came Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt, both grinning from ear to ear. Coach Spencer and Miss Wells held hands and jumped up and down in circles as if they were kids on pogo sticks. And wonder of wonders, Reggie Dumfrey was right beside them, doing the twist like a man possessed with happiness. On one side of the room, Mel was cartwheeling and flipping with unbridled zeal, and Elle ran. She ran around the perimeter of the room, her hair streaming behind her like the afterburners on a jet. She ran as I'd never seen her run before, swift, strong, and beautiful. Laughter broke out here and there until it boiled over into a full eruption of glee. There were chortles and chuckles, snickers and titters, cackles and giggles, guffaws and snorts. People held their stomachs and slapped their thighs. They gripped their chairs and tables in an effort to stay upright. Their entire group of high schoolers and Mr. Lamore were on the floor rolling around in tears of glee. I stopped my happy dance to soak it all in. Then, in the midst of the euphoric chaos, a bluebird appeared overhead and flew in circles of light over the crowd. Flakes of shimmering gold drifted down from his flight path and settled on lashes and shoulders and outstretched hands. The bird flew toward me, and I lifted my finger for a perch. He descended, and much to my utter delight, alit with a final golden flap. "Where did you come from, little friend?" I asked. He twitched his head from side to side. I ran one finger down his glossy blue back. He opened his beak and began to warble a blissful song, like a key in the lock. A tune peeled back what looked like a curtain in the middle of the ceiling, and a heavenly ladder was revealed. There, on the bottom rung, stood Pua and Maggie with Joseph and Daniel in their arms. The boys were both clapping and giggling. Pua and Maggie smiled so radiantly, my eyes could scarce take them in. A young man stood on the step just above them, his blonde tresses aglow in a glorious haze. Two others were positioned behind him on a higher rung, but their faces were obscured by the bright aura surrounding the ladder. The young man looked right at me and waved. Did I know him? My hand shot up to wave back, and the bluebird took flight, circled the room, and landed on the young man's outstretched hand. When he smiled, he looked just like Mother. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Then, as quickly as they had appeared, they all disappeared. The curtain fell back, and the ceiling was just a ceiling. I looked out at the people still dancing and laughing as the lights and the music began to fade. They seemed oblivious to the heavenly vision I'd just seen. I scanned the crowd, searching for my family. Not in the back. Not among the dancing couples. Not on the floor. Then I spotted them. In the midst of the twirling and swirling, they stood, motionless, rooted to one spot in the middle of the room. David had one arm around Miranda, and the other around Mother. Susan and Scott held hands beside them. All stared heavenward. Tears streamed down their faces. Glory lit their eyes. And I knew. Oof. They had seen it. They had seen them. Oh, my gosh. Okay, wait, sorry. I gotta see. Okay, this one's short. Chapter 27 is short. Okay, chapter 27, the night. The night became known in our town as the night the angels danced. People demarcated their lives by whether something happened before or after that night. Eventually, it became so much a part of our native lingo, we simply called it the night. Conversations around town were sprinkled with phrases like, "Now let's see, that happened before the night, so it must have been 81, or the twins were born 9 months after the night. Happiest babies you've ever seen." The atmosphere in our small town was altered by the night. Churches that had been half empty were suddenly full. Youth groups that had been puny doubled and tripled overnight. Pastors who had been on the verge of boredom and despair were bombarded with phone calls. "Pastor Joe, got time for a cup of coffee? Pastor Beth, did you hear about the goings-on at the high school? Can I bend your ear for a minute or two, Pastor Art?" The editor-in-chief of the paper was present at the night, and he ran a front-page piece about it. The headline read, "Angelic Disruption at Art Night. Euphoric Eruption Ensues." The article was chock full of first-hand accounts. The stories weren't just descriptions of the lights, the sounds, the laughter, the art, or even the angels. They were testimonies of miraculous happenings in individuals' lives. Some told of physical aches and pains disappearing instantly. One lady had been diagnosed with breast cancer, said the lump simply vanished. Others testified that depression and anxiety that had plagued them for years were eliminated. The article quoted Dr. Brown as saying, "My mother always told me that laughter does good like a medicine. Never gave it much credence, but from now on it will be high on my list of remedies." Mr. Wilson reported, "The grief from losing my son all those years ago lifted. I slept through the night for the first time in ages." Fritz said, "After dancing the polka for over an hour, I felt fit as a fiddle and ready for more. Haven't had so much fun since the missus passed." "I woke up the next morning with an energy of 18-year-old, Mrs. Grant said, along with some pretty sore stomach muscles. "The evening was effervescent, sparkling, exhilarating, and bubbling over with life," said Miss Wells. "I could just burst with joy. Even Reggie Dumfrey didn't walk away the same." "Guess what I felt was love," he said. "Yeah, that's it. It was big-time love." My favorite quote, though, was from Mel. She said, "If I'd known God was so fun, I'd have gone to church years ago." Elle didn't make any remarks for the printed page, but she told me on the phone the next day that her short leg was no longer her short leg. Her mother had taken out the yardstick and measured. "I now have identical appendages," she bragged. The newspaper reporter asked Mother for a quote. She declined. I did too. I figured I had already said enough. Besides, I really wasn't sure how to put into words what had taken place. Mother called it transformative, which is probably as close as words could get. It certainly described what happened to our family. That evening, when we got home from the school, David and Mother spent an hour behind closed doors talking. Susan, Scott, and Miranda kept me company in the front room. Miranda, in particular, was full of questions. Nothing in her background had prepared her for such a heavenly perspective on life, and she was eager to know more. Of course, those of us who'd spent our whole lives in church weren't exactly prepared for what we'd experienced either. Susan and Scott sat on the couch wiping gold flakes off each other's shoulders and hair and dropping them into my bowl, which I had restored to its place on the coffee table. They, too, were excited to mull over the night's happenings, even though they had to return to the cities by morning. I couldn't believe they had all made such an effort to be there. Wouldn't have missed this for the world, Susan said. It's just what family does. Was that family on the ladder, do you think? I asked, her eyes brimmed with tears. I don't know who the ones in the front were, she said, but I'm pretty sure I saw Dad and Grandma in the back row. You did? And what about the young guy in the middle? Did you recognize him? She shook her head. Seems like I should have. By the time Mother and David emerged from behind closed doors, I felt as though Miranda and Scott were part of the family. Turns out, she actually was. Besides coming to support his kid sister, David had taken time off work and journeyed across 2 states with Miranda to inform Mother that they had eloped, and they were wondering if she would be present in about 6 months to help deliver her first grandchild. What grandmother/baby catcher in her right mind could turn that down? Although Mother looked slightly undone, with her hair still askew and her makeup smudged by tears, an inner peace shone from her eyes. I hugged her with all my might, and she whispered in my ear, "Another bridge rebuild." It was a night to remember for sure, a night bursting with goodness. Miss Wells had captured it. It was effervescent. It tapped a wellspring of joy in our community that did not exist prior to it, and persisted long after it. Before the night, I wouldn't have described the people in our town as mean. Grumpy, maybe, but definitely not malicious. They genuinely cared for each other, but there was sadness in our midst, a heartache that ran like an undercurrent through the streets. I didn't know if it had to do with layoffs at the paper mill, or boys who hadn't come home from Vietnam, or rising gas prices, or my daddy's accident, or Rick's suicide, or if all those things were just chapters in one long saga of loss and hardship. I did know that after the night, there was a new skip in the collective step of the town. People laughed more easily, hugged more freely, danced more often, and hoped more deeply. They prayed like they were heard, cried like someone cared, and looked for the good even in the toughest situations and hardest hearts. And they found it. The good, the light, the wonder, the beauty, the joy, and the life that come from oh my gosh. Sorry. I'm going to read that paragraph again. I did know that after the night, there was a new skip in the collective step of the town. People laughed more easily, hugged more freely, danced more often, and hoped more deeply. They prayed like they were heard, cried like someone cared, and looked for the good even in the toughest situations and hardest hearts. And they found it. The good, the light, the wonder, the beauty, the joy, and the life that come from encountering the goodness of heaven. Highlighting that whole paragraph, because that's amazing. I'm not sure why the night the angels danced happened in our little 2-stoplight town in the boondocks of northern Minnesota, but it did. If I had to speculate, I would say Fritz bearing his soul to me and receiving forgiveness had something to do with it. I think the way Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Grant expressed their love for each other, their families, and their community was a major ingredient. Perhaps it had something to do with my story as well. I didn't really think of myself as being a hero, but I definitely had been on a journey, and maybe it's just what happens when you accept the call and step into the unknown. Supernatural aid shows up. Maybe it was like Mother said, when God's truth is spoken boldly, he confirms it with signs and wonders following. Or maybe, and I've never said this aloud to anyone before, but I've wondered on my bed at night, maybe there just comes a moment when the thing so many have asked for so many times for so many years simply comes to pass. The kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven. All I know for sure is that a thin place developed as art and light and love merged into something beautiful. So the angels came down and danced, and we danced with them. Okay, I genuinely think I'm almost done, so I'm going to keep going until I finish this. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. I don't have allergies. Canceling that in the name of Jesus. But I think yesterday, because my throat had started feeling a little bit weird, but then yesterday, because I was hosting at work, I was literally standing outside all day and talking the whole day. So I was like breathing it all in. There was cotton flying around. There was ashes coming out of, because we have like a wood burning oven. Pizza oven, and so there was like ashes flying around, the cotton was going crazy, and so I'm like, my throat's kind of rough and my nose is very stuffy this morning, but we're powering through, and I think we're almost done with this book, so I'm gonna finish it because this has been incredible. So okay, chapter 28, Afterlife. 35 years later, I am once again mulling over the night and praying for another visitation from heaven, for I am in another thin place, sitting in a hospice room by Mother's bedside, surrounded by family members. David is here with some of his family. Susan is here as well. And Scott should be here soon. Yes, they actually did get married. Their children, children's spouses, and a few grandkids are also in attendance. Teacher Anne sits in a rocking chair next to my mother's bed. Over the past few weeks, this has been her spot, close by the side of her dearest friend. We moved Mother down to the cities 4 years ago, after I received an urgent text from Mel, or Pastor Mel, as the members of River of Life Fellowship up in St. Gerard now call her. She was our eyes and ears on the home front to keep us abreast of Mother's health and welfare. Her text read, "Found M in car asleep at wheel in church parking lot, at least not found by SRD in middle of road this time. Took her home, doc checked on her, please call, there is a time for everything." M, of course, stood for Mother, and SRD was Sheriff Reggie Dumfrey. Oh my gosh, shut up. In his second term at said position and doing quite a fine job from all I had heard. "There is a time for everything" was our agreed upon phrase. Not sure why we thought a secret code was needed to say your mother's health is failing and she can't live by herself anymore. Guess in some ways we never outgrew relating to each other as childhood friends, or perhaps we just liked the sound of secret phrase better than the harsh words of reality. Whatever the case, the words motivated my siblings and me. We moved Mother down to David's remodeled daylight basement. He had moved back to the cities years ago, after Miranda's final bout with cancer left him by himself with a house full of kids. Aww. He wasn't quite sure how he and the one little chick left in his nest would manage Mother's care, but he was willing to give it a go. We prayed all would go well, and, as God so often does for Mother, he answered our prayers in a way that seemed perfect for her. A few weeks after we had Mother safely tucked into her new digs, Teacher Ann called. "Does Lizzie have room for a roomie?" she asked. "Florida has gotten lonely." Teacher's second husband had passed away suddenly from a heart attack, leaving her to ramble around her large condo in Coral Springs by herself. Mother was delighted by the prospect of being able to assist her grieving friend, and we were thrilled for Mother to have a companion, so we moved Teacher in as well. She and Mother have tottered around that apartment together for the past 4 years, with occasional breaks when Teacher has spent a week or two back in Coral Springs. They listened to their old albums, watching movie classics, cooked family dinners, and told their favorite stories to anyone who would sit down long enough to listen. Of course, their best told tale is the story of unseen things above, of angels and pearl gates and colors and music, and the good, good king of the great city. It's a story that has won the hearts of each of the grandchildren one by one. Then, 6 weeks ago, Mother fell on ice and broke her hip. At first it appeared she would recover, but then she caught a nasty cold that turned into pneumonia. The doctors have tried everything they knew to do, but every part of her body had slowly been shutting down. So here we sit today in a hospice room, waiting for the gates of eternity to be opened for this precious woman, my amazing mother. Oh! A nurse wades through the crowded room and taps me on the shoulder. "Excuse me, but there's a woman at the front desk who wants to speak to you," she whispers. "Could you tell her this is not a good time?" I whisper back. "Please get her contact information. Tell her I will call her back in a few days." "I'm sorry, I already tried that, Mrs. Bradley." She's quite insistent that she talk to you. Oh my gosh. The fact that she is revealing all these things in what's basically an epilogue is insane. "Oh yes, I did marry Mr. Ben Bradley, but only 3 years ago. After his grandpa died, he and his mother moved back to their former town. Ben and I wrote letters for a while and tried to sneak in occasional long-distance phone calls, but our efforts grew further and further apart until they ceased altogether. I moved down to the cities right after high school to work with Scott at his studio. Ben graduated from college, got married, and moved out to the East Coast. No surprise, he became a political cartoonist. I followed his career from a distance. Our local paper carried his syndicated work. He was very good. I was happy for him. As for me, I was excited about my work with Scott, especially since he steered all the baby photography my direction. I loved it, and I created quite a name for myself in the region for baby portraits, both photographs and sketches. I also loved being part of a team of photographers who worked with the NICUs around the cities. We volunteered our time and talents for families with infants in crisis. My work was incredibly rewarding and my life so full. I didn't have much time for a serious relationship. I dated a few guys over the years, but for various reasons, nothing serious ever developed. The older I got, the more distant the idea of marriage became. I focused on my work, my art, and my ever-expanding troop of nieces and nephews. One day, 4 years ago, a message popped up on my Facebook page. It was from Elle, who is a professor of English literature at New Brighton College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Her message read, "Attended a publisher's function in New York City last week. Guess whose path intersected with mine? Number 3 on your list, Ben Bradley. Turns out my father is now resident at the rehab facility where his father is the chaplain. Small world. He inquired about you. Thought you might be intrigued by this valuable tidbit. I stopped chewing my caribou coffee croissant to digest that information, and I nearly choked when she added, "By the way, he's single." I admit I had taken a peek at a few pictures of Ben on Facebook, but although I was curious about his life and family, I didn't allow myself to become a stalker. It was just too hard on my heart. Maybe the biggest reason my dating relationships hadn't turned more serious was because I was always searching for someone just like Ben. But there was only one Ben, and he was married. At least that's what I thought until the day Elle's message arrived. At that point, I threw caution to the wind and became a bona fide stalker. I found out that he had been divorced for many years and was a single dad of 2 college-age girls. I thought about my dream with Ben and Daniel and the babies in the backpack. Unbeknownst to me, after bumping into Elle, Ben had been stalking my social media as well. And one morning, as I sipped my chai tea and checked my email, another message popped up on Facebook. It said, "Am I too late? Evening is sometimes the best part of the day to hang out." He certainly had taken a long detour, but he obviously remembered the dream too, and he was hoping he wasn't too late. He wasn't. Once we reconnected, it was as if the feelings I had for him that had been carefully bottled and put on a shelf had been taken down, uncorked, and poured back into my heart. After just a few months of long-distance romance, he moved back to the cities, and we took up where we left off, hanging out in the evenings until our hearts were so crazily intertwined that we knew marriage was the only reasonable option. And so here we are today. He's sitting next to me, his 6-month-old daughter in his lap, sound asleep. That would be the other major development. My own late-in-life baby, Annabelle, the light of our lives. You'd better go check it out, babe, Ben says softly. I promise I'll come and get you if anything changes. I lean over, give him a kiss, and run a finger over Annabelle's plump cheek. I pick my way through the somber assembly, giving little squeezes of encouragement to the hands of those who seem particularly distraught. It has been a long day already, and it's only noon, I think. Actually, I'm not sure what time it is. I check my phone. It's 1:45 p.m., later than I thought. As I plod down the hallway, I see a young woman standing with her back to me at the front desk. I have no idea what this is about, but I want to get it over with and get back to Mother. I walk up behind her. She doesn't seem to hear my approach. I clear my throat. Excuse me, I'm Pearl Bradley. Are you the one asking for me? She turns around. A radiant smile floods her face. Excuse me. She is a beautiful young woman with tawny skin and curly black hair swept into a thick ponytail. The plaid scarf around her neck is undone. Her puffy winter coat is unzipped in a concession to the warmth of the waiting room. She appears to be 30 years old or so, maybe younger, I'm not sure. Oh, yes, Mrs. Bradley, I'm sorry, she says. I was lost in thought. Yes, I'm the one who asked to speak with you. Do I know you? I ask. Well, not exactly, she replies, although from what I've heard, we have met before under fairly unusual circumstances. From what you've read? Now I am truly befuddled. I don't mean to be rude, but this is not a great time for me. My mother is dying, and I would sincerely like to be by her side. Now what can I do for you? I'm so sorry, Mrs. Bradley. I know this is an extremely inconvenient time, but I fly back to Houston in a few hours. I'm just here visiting my folks. I'll be quick, I promise. She reaches into her bag and pulls out a newspaper. This morning, after church, I was looking through the Sunday paper when I came across the article about the work you and Scott Stewart do, your photography of babies and families in crisis, and I noticed this sketch you drew years ago of one of the first crisis babies Mr. Stewart photographed. She hands me a section of the Sunday paper. It is folded back to show the feature article written about In the Arms of the Angels, the nonprofit organization Scott and I now run. I forgot it was being published today, but there it is. I called the studio on a long shot to see if I might locate you, she said. Mr. Stewart answered the phone, even though he says you're always closed on Sundays. I guess he thought it might be an important call. He said he was just there to gather some paperwork. Anyway, when I told him my story, he told me where I could find you. He said I should come here and ask to speak with you. Even though it's a bad time, I think you'll be glad I came. Okay, so what's your story? She points to one of my sketches featured in the article. That's me. I'm Siobhan. Siobhan James. She pauses to see if I'm getting what she's saying. I was born very prematurely, she continues. All the doctors thought I was going to die, so the nurse called in Mr. Stewart to come and take pictures. My parents were grateful for his service, but they were convinced the doctor's prognosis for me was wrong. They let Mr. Stewart take the pictures, but they believed they were not going to be my last pictures. I stayed in the hospital for weeks, alive but not thriving. Then one day my parents received an envelope from Mr. Stewart's studio. They thought it was going to be another photograph that had been forgotten, but when they opened it up, there was this sketch, the one in the newspaper, the one you drew. Recognition floods my mind. Siobhan, as is Siobhan and Timothy. When they looked at that sketch, they saw life, my life, Siobhan says, and the hope they had been clinging to turned to belief. From that day forward, I began to thrive. Within a week, they were able to take me home, and well, here I am today. Oh my gosh. She pulls a manila envelope from the bag on her shoulder, withdraws a piece of paper, and hands it to me. I gasp and put one hand to my mouth. The paper is aged around the edges, but still vibrant with color. It is the copy of my sketch I sent to Susan to give to Scott those many years ago. Mrs. Bradley, Siobhan says, I thought you should know. I lived. And your vision or dream of whatever it was of me as a living, breathing baby wasn't just a dream. It was reality waiting to happen. Ooh! Tears sting my eyes. All my frustration with the timing of her visit vanishes. I reach for her and pull her into an embrace. She melts into my arms. She lived. She lives. I lean back and study her face, comparing it to the face that lives indelibly in my memory. Siobhan James, I am very, very happy to see you again. Thank you for making the effort to find me. Thank you for telling me your story. I would love to know more. She reaches back into her bag and digs out a business card. It reads, Siobhan James, ML, CPM, Hands of Love Midwives Group, Houston, Texas. You're a baby catcher? I ask. Yes, ma'am. Certified for 5 years now. Oh, we have much to talk about. Pearl, a voice calls from down the hallway. I turn and see Ben standing outside Mother's room. My breath catches. Pearl, we may need you now, he says tenderly but firmly. I am momentarily frozen. Mrs. Bradley, you should go, says Siobhan quietly. You can call me whenever you're ready. Thanks for hearing me out. I try to smile as I hand back the sketch. I have no words. She seems to understand. I turn back to Ben, who waits for me. Here I am again, Lord, in a thin place. This place between life and death, heaven and earth, arrival and departure. How do I do this? A still small voice nudges my heart. It is a voice that sounds like rushing waters, a voice I have heard many times throughout the years, a voice I love. Soon she will see me face to face. Hope penetrates my soul. I'm infused with peace so unexpected it takes my breath away. I take my next step. Interlude, Lizzie. Lizzie. Her eyes flutter open at my voice. John? Hello, love. Ready to go? Her face lights up, and she takes my hand. I'm so happy you came for me. Me too. Truth be told, Ilsa wanted the assignment, but the king asked her to stay with William. William? Our son, Lizzie. Our amazing, beautiful son. Wait till you meet him. He's at the gate with your mom and everyone else, eager to welcome you. What are you waiting for? She says with a laugh. I'm enthralled all over again with her beauty. The waiting is over. Let's go home. Oh my gosh! What the heck? Okay, chapter 29, A Thin Place. As Scott hurriedly enters the room, he scans the scene in front of him, seeking answers. The rest of the family misses his entrance, but from my vantage point standing next to Mother's bed, I notice it. Our eyes meet over the hugging figures that fill the small hospice room. I muster a gentle smile through the tears streaming down my face. She's gone, I mouth. He stops in his tracks, his head falls to his chest. All the energy of trying to get there on time courses out of his dangling fingers. I rub Susan's shoulder. She sits next to Mother's still body on the bed. She glances up, and I nod in the direction of her recently arrived husband. She rises and makes her way to his side, where they fall into each other's arms. I slip out of Ben's arms, which has been wrapped around my waist, and sit down in the spot my sister occupied. I reach out to caress Mother's face. Her skin is soft and smooth. The wrinkles that were so prevalent hours ago have nearly vanished. I am shocked at how cool she has become. It was the first hour of my entire existence without her, and already I feel lost. It's not as if Mother was afraid of dying, or I am afraid of never seeing her again. Just last week she asked me to tell her again, to tell her about the golden road and the singing stones and the swirling colors. Every detail of my journey to the baby catcher gate seemed to delight her afresh, even though she had heard it 1,000 times. She knew her time to step off the planet was approaching, and far from dreading it, she was full of eager anticipation. Her faith was about to become sight. I am thankful she is where she longed to be, yet even so, my heart is heavy with the agony of parting. I wonder how long it will be before I breathe without pain. Across the bed, a small movement catches my eye. I look over at Teacher Anne, who holds her namesake, little Annabelle, on her lap. For hours my baby girl has slept peacefully, but now she is stirring. Her chubby arms stretch up toward the ceiling. She seems to be reaching for something or someone. Teacher bounces her up and down, hoping to keep her content. Ben moves to scoop her up, unwilling for her to disrupt the solemn atmosphere in the room. Before he can gather her up, Annabelle's plump hands begin to clap, and her pudgy legs begin to kick. Ben steps back in surprise. Then, quite unexpectedly, Annabelle sits bolt upright, reaches for something, and bursts into laughter, her little belly shaking with mirth. Head swivel as tear-filled eyes turn to this suddenly giggling infant girl. It is so incongruous with the setting that I am taken aback. I reach across the bed to take her and calm her down. Teacher Anne shakes her head. Let her be, Pearl. Look. She runs her finger across Annabelle's cheek and then stretches it toward me. It is glistening with gold flakes. Annabelle's laughter doesn't stop. In fact, her giggles blossom into a fully blown belly laugh, the contagious, viral, irresistible, full of life and joy type. I look to the ceiling where Annabelle is focused, but I'm unable to see the source of her amusement. When I look into her eyes, though, they shimmer with a divine golden light, a light only she can see, a light that has tickled her funny bone and won't quit. Then, maybe because our emotions are so raw, or maybe because the laughter is so captivating, or maybe because Mother wouldn't have it any other way, the entire room suddenly erupts in a fountain of laughter. Laughter mixed with a wellspring of tears. It is exhilarating. It is exhausting. It is exactly what Mother would love. It is a thin place. The end. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? Okay, I'm going to read this acknowledgement, and then I'll give my thoughts. Foremost, thanks go to my Lord Jesus Christ, who prompted me to start writing, enabled me to keep writing, and provided people every step along the way to believe in my writing. My mom Doris, sister-in-law Karen, and cousin Giselle, Joy and Kona Ladies Writing Group, Rhoda, Sarah, Brennan, Chrissy, Martha, Carmen, Gail, Ann, Joe, Kathy, Cherry, Jennifer, Denise, Margot, and the #1 Ladies Book Club members, all of whom read early drafts and urged me on despite the many flaws. Your feedback and encouragement was priceless. Special thanks to the developmental editor, Natalie Hanneman, for her patient tutoring and provoking suggestion to copy editors Lori Baxter and Hannah Comerford at the Scribe Source for their scrub of the superfluous and erroneous, and to the midwife Stephanie Young for her expert advice about the birthing scene. For the second edition, I am indebted to Sherry Ward and her team at Square Tree Publishing, especially Sharon Marta, for the stunning cover design. Finally, my deepest gratitude goes to my family, my parents who not only gave me life, but gave me a wonderful life, my brothers who protect, entertain, and challenge me even to this day, my husband and children who cheer me on and allow me to spend hours holed up in my computer nook with fairly limited requests for food or attention. Their love, support, and pursuit of their own creative outlets have been gentle but firm goads to my backside to keep me pressing forward. Way to go, family, way to go. You are my highlight daily and forever. Oh my gosh! Okay, sorry. Then now there's an about the book. Life took an unexpected turn for my family on Friday, April 18th, 2008. It was the day my niece, Taryn Lee, was killed in a car accident on her way home from a college visit in Eastern Washington. She was 18, just about to graduate from high school, just about to begin life. A life full of her special brand of wit, compassion, and beauty. A life we were all convinced would pack a powerful punch far beyond the reach of her diminutive 5'0" nature, or 5'0" frame. And it did, just not like we thought it would. Yes, she was just my niece. To those who live outside the web of relationships in what I fondly call the Cerna Nation, it is hard to explain the depths of what that word means. I have many nieces and nephews, as well as great nieces and nephews, right around 70 currently. Oh my gosh. Each one is precious, interesting, valued, amazing. But Taryn held a special spot in my heart. She and her family came to live with my husband and me for a while when she was 6 months old. It was before I had any children of my own. Unlike my husband, I had not grown up in a family where new babies appeared almost monthly. I was inexperienced and slightly intimidated by Taryn's presence in my home, but when she was the kind of baby every person with baby fears should learn from, funny, easy, and adorable. When my son entered the world a year later, Taryn and her older brother became his favorite people. When we broke the news to him when he was 3 years old that they were not in fact his siblings but his cousins, he was devastated. Eventually, I had 3 children of my own, and a sister was added to Taryn's family. The lives of these 6 cousins were intertwined at high school and church and family events throughout their childhood. So it was with great sorrow that we received the news of Taryn's death on that day in 2008. An enormous hole opened up in our hearts, and none of us were quite sure how to fill it. For me, the only comfort I found was in pressing into my faith. I believed in the promise of eternal life in Christ, believed in the hope of heaven, but this sudden loss produced an urgent need to know more of the reality of life beyond this life. I scoured the scriptures and devoured testimonies about heaven. I sat quietly for hours in the Lord's presence, not even knowing what to ask. I had no words. Yet he met me there, and he led me through the valley of the shadow of death via a heavenly route. The eternal perspectives I gathered there soothed my soul. Then a day came, many months down the road, I'm not exactly sure when, that my heart was whole again. Not the same as before, never the same, but whole, and hopefully better. Years later, I was reading my Bible and praying, as is my habit in the morning. I was in a new season in life. My children were growing up and heading off to college. I was feeling lost, small, uncertain as to where I should expend my time and energy. I asked God, "What do you want me to do now?" He responded with a question of his own. "What do you want to do?" I was taken aback. What did I want to do? It took me a while to formulate my desire into a simple statement. I want to do something creative that binds up the brokenhearted and sets captives free. A pretty broad stroke, I know, but it was true. It was what I wanted to do. Fast forward to January 16th, 2015. Once again, I was sitting with the Lord in the morning, and he said to me, "There is a baby catcher gate in heaven." Nothing more, just that. I pondered his words for a moment and then said, "Thank you for that interesting nugget of information. What would you like me to do with it?" He promptly replied, "Write a book." To which I replied, "Well, that should be interesting, since I have never written a book, and I don't know what you're talking about." He answered, "I have, and I do." How could I argue with that? The next evening, I sat down with a yellow legal pad and a pen and prayed. "Okay, Lord, here I am. I give you my pen. I give you my imagination. I give you whatever gifts I possess, and ask that you fill in whatever I lack." And in faith, I began to write. To my utter amazement, a story unfolded before my eyes. A story woven from the heavenly treasures I had unearthed in my time of great sorrow after Taryn's death. Over the course of my following months as I continued to write, I realized that this just might be the thing I wanted to do, something creative that binds up the brokenhearted and sets captives free. I did not know I wanted to write this book. I did not know I could write this book, but apparently he did. It is my prayer that in this story you might find a breath of hope, a whisper of comfort, a ray of joy, in imagining the things that are beyond our imagination, the things God has prepared for those who love him, and in so doing, may your broken heart be mended and your soul set free.
Taryn would love that. Whew. Oh my gosh. Okay, and then there's this section, it says, okay, so that was about the book, and then this says, for her. They might have complained about the color of the cummerbund or the complexity of the cufflinks. They might have grumbled about her choosing the hottest day of the year, for wearing such a getup. They might have tugged at the staid collar or mumbled about their scrunched up toes, but they would have worn tuxes for her. Instead, they wear freshly purchased suits of somber, black or navy blue. They are too young. Oh my gosh, this is a poem about her. Oh gosh. They are too young to have them hanging at the ready in their closets. They stand in a semicircle with shoulders hunched, sober fabric strained against broadening shoulders. They stuff their hands in pockets, unable to reconcile the load they've just carried. They stare straight ahead, willing the solid veil that encases her to part, to see her one last time. They don't shuffle their appropriately clad feet, rooted into the sod like a fresh cop of grief. They fulfilled their solemn privilege for her. Now they cannot fathom how to move again. They can only watch and learn as a more mature navy figure approaches her hidden form. He reaches toward her burnished veil. Inlaid angels adorn her shoulders and feet. He reverently leans over and places first one hand and then the other in a final father-daughter dance. He hangs his head and speaks words meant only for her as he lovingly hands her to the bridegroom, clothed in splendor and light. For Uncle Randy and the young men who carried Taryn that day in April 2008. Oh my gosh. Whoa! Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Oh gosh. I'm reading okay, so now about the author. Born and raised in a family of educators in Minnesota, Wendy Jo traveled to the University of Washington in Seattle to complete her bachelor's degree in theater arts. In 1986, she married her college sweetheart. They settled in Bellevue, Washington to run their contracting business and raise their 3 children. In 2009, she received a master's degree in psychology, which she has used to educate and counsel hurting people in a variety of settings. In writing her first novel, The Babycatcher Gate, she has found a way to combine her love of the arts and education with her passion for healing the brokenhearted. In 2020, Wendy Jo released her second novel, The Agreements, followed by Solbakken, A Tale of Generations in 2023, and The Sabotage Scroll in 2025. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, and then she has these she has a little recipe in the back. That's so cute. Oh my gosh, I love that. Wow. Oh my gosh. That was literally so good. Oh my gosh. 5 stars for sure. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. I feel like I need to give like a rundown, but I'm also like, it's that moment when you finish a book where you're like in awe because it was so good, it wrapped up so well, and you're done with it, but then you're also sad because you're done with it. You know what I mean? Wow, that was so good. Genuinely will recommend that book to literally everybody because it was so good. I feel like I don't even have words. I might be able to I might try to see, this is the thing about streaming live. I'm like, I feel like I need to say stuff, but I don't have words.
I think I might try to like record a little like real video review and to post on Instagram of like kind of summing all my thoughts up, because I think I need time to like process. But oh my gosh, that was so good. Highly recommend that to anybody that's watching. Read that book, because wow. And if you were along for the ride, Spooky Tech, thank you for being here. I think you were here from the beginning, but you've been coming back every week, and I so appreciate it. But even if you dropped in for a second, thank you so much for dropping in. I I finished that book, so that one's over, but I definitely want to keep doing this because I have had, okay, I will. Thank you. I have had so much fun reading this out loud. And I think it's just more inclusive. It's more not entertaining. It's not necessarily more entertaining, but it's more engaging for sure. And so I had reached out to a couple authors a while ago before I started this book to try to get permission from a couple other ones so that after I was done with this one. So I did actually get permission from another author to read her book. So she sent me a free ebook, which is amazing. So I'm super excited for that one. Let me actually see. I don't think I've downloaded it yet, but let me pull it up because I know that I have it here, and I want to tell you guys what it is so that you can buy it or find it or whatever before I read it. Okay, The Chalet Next Door by Cassandra Joelle is the name of it. The Chalet Next Door. So I reached out to her on Instagram and asked her if I could read her book on stream, and she said yes. So I'm super excited, and she sent me a free ebook. So I'm going to start that next week on my stream on Monday. So I'm super excited. So yeah, if you guys want to come back and join me on another reading through a book out loud, I would love that. And if you have any other recommendations or books you'd want me to read out loud, let me know. Obviously, I'd have to get permission from the author or potentially permission from the publisher of the book. But I'm more than happy to reach out to people. I've been trying to reach out to some people on Instagram just to see if they can, because ultimately, like, I'm not trying to make money off of this. I genuinely just love reading, and I love talking to people about reading. I love talking to people about books. I love getting people into reading. I want more people to love reading like I do, and so that's what this is supposed to be. That's what this is for me. It's honestly just like a passion project. I just want to read books and have people that want to join me on that journey. So let me know if you guys have any specific books you'd want me to read, or maybe authors that you'd want me to reach out to see if they would let me read some. I have the one that I'm going to start next, and then I have another author that said I could read like 5 chapters, I think she said, of her book, which is awesome. And that's a kind of a fun one too, because then I can read a snippet, get people hooked, get people excited about the book, and then, you know, I'll read it on my own time, but then give my thoughts and stuff. So that's going to be hopefully another thing that I can kind of find a rhythm with of doing like mini reviews and posting reels and stuff, giving my thoughts on books that I'm reading outside of the stream, because my, you know, stream now, I want to be me reading it. And then I don't know if you guys, this is something you'd want, because I know that the videos, because I obviously save them, my Twitch streams, I save them on Twitch, but I know that they usually expire after a certain amount of time. So would you guys want me to post them on YouTube so that they're always there? You can always go back to them. I'd have to look and see. I know that I got permission to read them out loud on stream, but I don't know if there would be like a copyright, like have to take it down on YouTube because I'm reading somebody else's work. So that's something I would maybe have to look into. But I might do that now just to see. But anyways, that's all for today. I went a little bit longer just because I ended up being closer to the end of the book than I thought. So finished my book, and I'm super excited to start The Chalet Next Door by Cassandra Joelle next week. So if you guys want to join me for that next week, I would love to see you guys here next Monday at 10 a.m. I hope you guys have an incredible week. I hope your weather is good. I hope your work is good. I hope your families are good and your friends are good. And I hope you guys have a great week. Love you guys. Bye.